Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Pastor Francis. I'm with my wife, Delamon, today. We're going to be delivering the safeguarding training. I'm the safeguarding lead for the NEC, and we'd like to welcome all of you to our training this morning. And thank you for coming on so early. I know if one or two are still coming in, so we're going to give you time to do that. Just to clarify, before I pray, just to introduce ourselves a bit, my role, I also have family ministries as well. I work for the conference. Delamon, my wife, she doesn't work for the conference, just to clarify. She is a volunteer. But one of the reasons why we obviously do a lot of programs together, and the reason why she's with me today, she does have a lot of experience as she's a trained school teacher for many years. She's also run organizations where she's had to manage the safeguarding aspect. So we will be doing this presentation together, and we are kind of recording it. So we will, in that sense, it will be shared for those who need it for future trainings. However, we are going to be running some area trainings throughout all the area of the conference, starting from March. We're going to be running it throughout the year, but they will be live trainings. So this is one we're doing on Zoom so everybody can benefit. So I'm really pleased that all of you can be here. And I pray that as we, begin, you will get something from this training that we are doing today, which will look at both children and adults at risk. We do both. It's not separated. And, so we hope that you can gain a blessing. So to begin, I also have, I think my secretary, Sister Vera, should be on. I don't know Natal, because I know you've got co-hosting rights. If you see her, if Sister Vera, you could make yourself known so Natal can give you hosting rights as well, because we had to just let people in. But hopefully we will get all that done. And I also have Sister Iris, who's monitoring as well. So we've got about 3 people here today helping monitor the Zoom. Anyway, let's just bow our heads together as we pray. Gracious Father, Lord, we just want to thank you again for bringing us together this morning. I want to thank you for the people who have joined for this very important program on safeguarding to help us as a church leaders to be effective in how we care for those who are in our midst. I want to pray, Lord, as we lead out this morning, that you will not only go before us, Lord, but you will bless each person here, be with each officer, be with each safeguarding lead and DBS person as they have to administer all of this in their local churches. And we want to pray, Lord, that you will equip us to be effective for you, that we may be effective leaders in what we do, and that you may bless it. We ask these things now in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Amen. So I don't know if you all know on your icon, I know some people have just joined in as well. How many could indicate if you've done safeguarding before by just raising your hands in the icon there? Okay, so you go to the react button. I see number 3, Claudette. I see a few are doing that, putting a thumbs up. That is brilliant. Oh, wow. Seems like quite a number of you. Praise the Lord. And so that is really, really good to see. So that shows we've got a lot of experience here today. So I'm really, really pleased to hear that. And in the same vein, I'm just wondering those who might be new to the role. Wow, we've still got loads of people putting their hands up first, so I don't know. We better let that finish. 108 people, isn't it? So that's good. Yeah, okay. I can see a few hands now. So 1 or 2 of you are new. So that is good. If you are new to the role. So that is good. So the idea for the training today is we are primarily talking to all of you, but of course, we hopefully have a lot of safeguarding leads on the platform, and you will have to, at the end, be able to sort of do some of this training locally in your own churches, or at least be, although we're coming around at the conference, you need to be, encouraging your church locally and your boards So what I will need you to do at some point is indicate, perhaps when we do the test, you can put it on that paper. Indicate if you are a safeguarding lead, because we will have to send you some additional material to help you in terms of the training. So that is something that we want, but we appreciate there's a lot of key officers here and we want you to gain from this, and you will obviously gain from this. Now we plan to finish at 3 o'clock. I think depending on the questions you may ask us, we may finish a lot earlier than that. So let's see how we go. One of the things two things I want you to try and do, because it is a safeguarding session, where possible, if you are safe to do so, we really do need you to have your cameras on. I see a lot of people have them off. I know one said they're driving, which is understandable why they are driving. So long as it is safe to do so, ideally, that's what we really will require. So we will be checking that as we go throughout the day, because we want to make sure people are present. I also want to confirm that if you've ever experienced any sort of abuse, you may find some of the things in the training a little bit uncomfortable, because we will touch on some different areas. Please, we'll start a little bit at the end that you can chat to us if you need to see us. And we'll have a question time as well at the end. As we go along, please try and keep your cameras on. I want to really stress this again, but we ask that you keep microphones muted unless you are participating in a discussion, unless you're taking part, just to keep the noise level down, because we are obviously recording it. We do this because we want to really minimize distractions, as we go in along. And that's really, really important. We understand there might be occasions when you would prefer to have your camera off. For example, if you're having problems with your internet speed, if you've got children who need your attention. But let me just say that the information we do share is sensitive information. And because of that, it's not appropriate for children. So if the children are in the room, please consider either using a headphone set or something like that, or angling your screen away. And we won't really ask you to share any experiences as such. It's not like a live training, but if anything, but for whatever reason does come up, we ask you to bear in mind that we want confidentiality. So we ask you to anonymize, if possible, your examples, if that helps, yeah? And if, anything you share, just make it so it's not really, can be identified too much. I hope that helps you, because we just want you to be safe. That's the main thing about this. Now I'm going to ask Delavan just to share the PowerPoint. So we're going to, I thought we could have this on. Okay, that'll be good. So hopefully you should be able to see this. And as we're saying, it should say safeguarding our church family. So it's a safeguarding awareness that we are doing today. So it's not going to cover everything, but it's going to give you the basis. We did send out initially this morning to those I saw registered. I sent out a safeguarding policy. I also sent you a couple of other documents as well. Adults at risk and safe at home. They are draft documents, but they can be used in your various settings. The BUC have produced them and they've said I need to send them out. So I've sent them out to everybody. If you have not got a safeguarding policy though in front of you now, because I don't know if people registered after I did that this morning, I'm going to ask hopefully Natal and Sister Vera, because she would have had those, if you could just put them on the chat for us, that'd be really brilliant. That'd be really good if you could do that. So at least everybody can access that policy, because as we go through, you will obviously need to do that. Now, as we said, because of the nature of what we're doing, sometimes issues come up. So we have got a counselling line in the church. This is run by Dee Kuriako. She's the chief counsellor. So anyone who rings, it's not a live service where somebody always answers, but you leave your name, number, and it's important you have your phone number. And of course, they will get back to you within 24 hours and assess the needs. So there is a counselling service there. We don't want anybody to feel that there's no help, no support for any situation. And it's good as a safeguarding leads for you to have this as well, because sometimes if people have suffered abuse or suffered trauma or situations, knowing that there is a counselling service there available for them to access, and it's very minimal charges, and no member will be turned away. This is really important. So it's good for you to also have this and use that as you're going along.
So we're just going to be looking now about what we're going to be covering in this training. So by the end, we want you to be able to recognise what abuse is and to be clear on that. We want you to know how to respond if you are told about a person's abuse. And then we want you to be confident with what action you need to take. And when we talk about action, we're talking about how you should record if somebody or if you're involved in an incident, how you should record it, and how you should respond in the way of how you should, who you need to speak to. So that's what we're going to be covering today. We're also going to be asking for you to be involved, and as you can appreciate, we have got over 100 people here, but we want you to get involved by writing things in the chat. So sometimes we will ask you a specific question. We'd like you to respond by just jotting that down in the chat. You can also feel free to write anything else you feel you would like to in the chat as well. But we also want you to use the icons in the React button at the bottom of your screen. So we are going to be, as we go through the presentation, ask you a question. And if we do ask you a question, we'd like you to, perhaps if you agree with the statement, you think it's true, you can give a tick. If you don't agree, if it's false and it's wrong or whatever you feel, give it the X there, or you can give it the thumbs up. So we are going to be asking you at some point to do that. And just in the way of a quick check, can everyone just please either give us a thumbs or the green tick, just so we can see that you are happy with what we've shared. Yeah, just so we know that people are understanding what we're sharing and you are. Okay, so that's good. So that's your little practice run, as it were.
Okay. Yeah, we're going to just look for some biblical foundation for this, but before we do, I'm just actually scanning through the Zoom, and I can see the first few front pages do have a lot of people with cameras on, but as you go through it, we see a lot of people without cameras. Please kind of indicate it as a reason why you've got your camera off at this moment, because we do want most people, as we say, to keep the cameras on because it is a safeguarding. We are monitoring it. I'm just going to ask those who are monitoring just to keep a check on that and just contact those people who are off. And, you know, if we don't have a reason, then we may have to consider asking you to leave, because we really do need to know this is really, really important. But anyway, from the biblical perspective, there is some biblical ground for safeguarding. What the Bible says, Deuteronomy 10 verse 18 says this: he defends the cause of what? The fatherless and the widow, and loves the foreigner, residing among you, giving them food and clothing. And also there's that text in James. I know the screen may be a little bit, hopefully you can see that, James chapter 1 verse 27. It says, religion that God our Father accepts as pure, faultless, is this: to what? Look after what? Look after the orphans, the widows in their distress. You see, God is concerned that we protect those. Part of coming to faith is to feel protected. It's not to come into faith and realize that you become vulnerable. And the really sad thing is, and I am really saddened when I think about this, is there are many situations sometimes, not in every church, but in some churches, where younger people, different people are new to church and said they feel vulnerable. And we need to be thinking as a church, what are we doing? And each of you have to look at your own church setting and think of your needs, but what are you doing to make church that safe place? People need to be safe, feel safe from abuse, feel church is a place they can come and be safe and be protected. Are you advertising things? Are you making those nice positive statements in church, to let people know that you have a good safeguarding policy, even for the point of children going to the toilet, for example? Is it advertised no young child should be allowed on their own, or responsible person? What announcements are you making? All of those things.
Yes, this text here, Proverbs 31:8-9. I think it speaks for itself, doesn't it? Open your mouth for the mute, for the rights of all who are destitute. Open your mouth, judge righteously, defend the rights of the poor and needy. And so, yes, some people, whether they be children or vulnerable adults, need that person to speak for them. And that is what we are here to do, to defend and to help support them the best way we can.
And as everyone said there, we have a responsibility to speak out and not really be silent on this. Children are completely dependent on us as adults to care for them, for their basic needs, to provide that guidance, and that's really important. And the actual policy itself, as it says here, the policy seeks to reduce the incidence of abuse and duty of care and or safety failures by providing procedures for best practice in child protection. I just want you to just understand that word. The policy seeks to reduce. It's not saying having the policy means nothing is going to happen. So let's not go around thinking or be blind to think nothing will happen. But what it does, it helps reduce those things, and it helps show that we have procedures. And when things do go wrong, we can learn from them. That's the main thing. And the fact that we have something in place, that is the important thing. Someone once said that we have heard what God has said in his word, and that's an important thing. But what we do as a church and what we have to say about policy is important. And obviously with church policy, it does have to get revised. We are learning, we are growing, and those things happen. Now, March 24, we did a review. We should have had a little assessment in 25. We have had that, and we've got some outline areas, but of course the new policy will be hopefully reproduced by March this year. But any policy that we have is only as good as it is used, and that's important to know. And I think that it's important that we try our best to ensure that we as workers are using it effectively. We need to make, as officers, basically, we need to be alert. We need to be responsive to the care and well-being of children, adults that may be at risk. And we need to make, I guess, safeguarding part of our culture. That's really, really important. And I think that's important, isn't it, Delamont?
And I think as well, I think most people probably will be the head of a department. And the important thing to do as the head of the department, you will have regular meetings where you meet with your team to plan your programs. And it's important, if they haven't been on any safeguarding training, to then for you to speak with them and for you to share the information that you've gleaned from this training. And I think not to do it all in like we've done it on a Sunday, but every time you have your meeting, to look at a different aspect. So it doesn't need to be no more than about 5 or 10 minutes at the start of every meeting to just discuss some aspect from the policy. We also encourage, I think, Pastor, you would say you'd encourage local pastors to do this as well on the boards. So as an item on the board agenda, again, to just take one small aspect from the policy and just review it. So if you think about it, every time you have a board meeting, you would have covered a lot of this material in the policy. And I think the important thing is that everybody has an understanding of what is expected and how they can support people.
Yeah, and this is really, really important. And I can't suggest that I can see when I did have a glance before, there's one or two of our pastors, my colleagues on. I just want to say to you, this is vital. We have our safeguarding leads in the church, which is really good. But as you know, as ministers, ultimately, if something happens, it always comes to your door. And the thing is, I think the sad thing is, let's not wait for something to happen to get involved with this, as we've had many meetings with, I know, many of you before on the safeguarding training we did back in May with Judy and a colleague. It's really important that we are proactive. So it's important now to make this. What you kind of need to do is look at your church setting. I appreciate each church is different. Some have a lot of children, some have very few, more elderly. Whatever your church setting is, you need to look at the aspects of the safeguarding and make sure you what are you doing in our church? The question needs to be asked, what are we doing? Yes, we need to have our officers DBS and all of that. That's the legal side. But also, what are we doing in terms of the training? How much awareness are we making? Is there anything more we can be doing to improve? And this is what we've tried to do from a conference perspective. Yes, we're going to try and get a lot more posters material, which I'll send you some links, at the end of this training. But ideally, you as well locally need to do stuff. And that's really will happen. Now, I'm seeing a few messages come up. Have we got a few questions? I can see there's about 70 in the chat and something just came up. So they was asking for something there. Natello, Iris, or Sister Vera, is there
Pastor John, they're asking if they did the training last year, do they need to repeat it this year? How often should all of us do this training, depending on role?
Yeah. Okay. The recommendation is that once you've done the training, it's valid for 2 years. So you don't necessarily have to come on in a year if you did it last year. However, I appreciate some people do come on for, refreshers or whatever. That's okay. But from the official stance, just like the DBS, it's the same thing. It's every 2 years. That's the current stance we are. We may change that, but that's what we're doing at the moment. So that's when you really need to be doing this training. And then, of course, as the policy gets updated, which it will, as I said, hopefully, Pastor Aki and myself are working on this for March. When that happens, what will happen is we will send all of you as officers the updated information with the notes of where the changes have been made. There's not going to be that much change, to be fair. It's more of some areas we're going to be looking at, which I'll mention a little bit as we're going along. So that's what will happen. But I hope that clarifies that one. Was there anything else that came up?
Some are saying if they can't put their cameras on, do they have to leave the training if they can't get their cameras on and do it at another time?
Right. When they say they can't get the cameras on, is it because physically it doesn't work or for other reasons?
There are reasons, health reasons, being with children, or just the environment that they're in, is what I've picked up from the chat.
Right. Okay. Well, for legitimate reasons like that, we can work with it so long as they just keep in touch with us. Yeah. But if it's just that I just don't want to do it, then that's a different reason.
And will that mean they need to leave? What's he saying?
So some will have to, if for example, if it's because of a safety reason like what you've just mentioned, they can't put the cameras on. We can understand that, and they've explained it, so that's okay. But if it's for other reasons, if for some reason they're at work and they cannot be at the training, then maybe this is not the best training for them to be at. So that's what we're saying to them. Maybe not, because you're not going to be able to concentrate on it anyway, are you? So it would be probably better to join in one of our other trainings at another time. But if it's a legitimate reason for a health reason or for children or some safety, you can't put it on and you've explained, that will be okay. Does that help? Yeah? Okay, brilliant. All right, so I see we've got a raised hand.
There are a few specific questions in the chat, which I think it will take you far too long
Yeah.
to respond to all of them.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
So if we go to Brother Moyo.
Brother Moyle?
You need to unmute, Brother Moyo.
Okay. What I'm going to suggest, take a note of all the comments, and what we can't always answer here, we will send an email to answer or after the session, okay? Or at least do something at the end if that helps people, because obviously I want to get through this today if we can in reasonable time. So that's not a problem. We will, we'll carry on with that. Okay, so moving on, just give you the little structure of how for those of you who may be new, those of you who are probably familiar with this, the way the church safeguarding policy is managed is we have a safeguarding policy which is union wide, which actually means it covers both conferences, North and South, and the missions, the Irish, the Scottish, and Welsh missions. So because of that, there's some variations in the missions, I will have to say. We mainly concentrate on what's here in England for the North and South. And what we've done on our website, on the NEC website, there is a safeguarding page, and you will see it's just the English policy that we have. We don't have, like the BUC would have, showing the emissions and stuff, because it's not necessary for us. So, but that is the overall body which governs us, and the BUC filters down to the conference. So we have our president, we have the designated safeguarding lead, which is myself. We have a spokesman, which is a communication officer, and a disclosure clerk that used to sit more in the secretariat, but in the NEC, it now sits with me, with my department. So we've tried to just have the safeguarding as one department. So we cover disclosure clerk and also the safeguarding lead. And what I would say for you to bear with us as a disclosure clerk, although I'm down there, my secretary is online, Sister Vera. It's just the two of us kind of managing this at the moment. So bear with us, but we do have a special number. And what we're going to do, hopefully at 12 o'clock today, we'll be doing a session for the DBS. So if you've got anybody which is a DBS clerk, stay by for 12. So we're going to do that session. But that's the structure of the conference. And then from our level, it comes down to local level, where you have the local minister, as I say, overall in charge, the designated safeguarding lead, the responsible person, which is effectively all the board members, all the lead members of the church are responsible people. And then we have the disclosure clerk, which looks after the DBS side. And we're going to be saying a little bit more about it later, but that basically is the structure. So from a conference, we will implement the information, and we're there to give you guidance. We cannot locally get involved with all your local situations. What we can do, though, is give you support and guidance as you have issues going through. And that's really our role, and to make sure the overall training and the leads are trained. So that's basically what we do. But that's the structure of how the safeguarding works. And that's found on page 11 of the policy. You can actually go on that if you just want to understand the overall structure, how it's work, and how we sort of run this. And we have regular reviews. I'm on the committee, so is other key officers of the different conferences to help, get the policy together. And that's how the structure works. Okay.
Okay, so this is one of the statements from the policy, and it says the Seventh-day Adventists affirm the dignity and worth of each human being and will not condone, neglect, bullying, or any form of physical, sexual, emotional, or spiritual abuse of any individual, whether in the church or in the community. And that is interesting, isn't it? So you should not just be concerned about, your church as a church family and community, but you need to be aware of the fact that you have a responsibility to people in your community. So something could be happening right outside your church, and it's not about, oh, it's got nothing to do with me, I'm just going to walk away. If you have spotted some sort of abuse taking place, you have a duty to report that. Okay, so just bear that in mind. I just want to now ask you to turn to page 2. You should have it, that should have been sent to you, the policy. And I just want you to answer a question. And that's the question. There are 7 policy statements. If you think that is true, can you go to the tick icon? If you think it's false, go to the X icon. Or you can alternatively use the thumb. Or even if you wish to, you can write in the chat how many statements, if you want to change it from the 7. So can everyone make their reaction now, please? Can everyone react to that point there? There are 7 policy statements. Is it true? Is it false? Do you agree? Can everyone react to that, please, now? I've got 1 thumb. Okay, we have a few more thumbs coming through.
Wow, a load.
Okay, so I think I can safely assume most people are in agreement. I didn't see any ticks. Which page? It was on page 2 of the policy statement. If you go to page 2, it should say policy statement. In the chat, somebody could write down how many policy statements there are. How many did you count in the policy statement? Yeah, somebody's just wrote there. Well done. That was, I can't see whose the name was, but yeah, you've written that correctly. Well done. So there are 8 statements. So just be aware that there are more than one. We haven't got time to go through every single statement. Okay, thank you everyone for that.
Okay, so the actual policy statements is very interesting. This is number 8 on the policy statement. It says the church will respect differences in gender, sexual orientation, culture, race, ethnicity, disability, and religious belief systems, and appreciate that all individuals are of value to the community of faith. Now, nobody is asking you to agree with a person's life choices, but we need to respect the individual and remember God is the judge. We are called to love people regardless of how they look or how they live. And that's really, really important. And if you go to page 13 of the policy, you will see this. And remember, everyone's on a journey. I would like to say that. That's really, 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 really important. Now, also, I think Delmon would like to say there's something else about safeguarding, isn't there, Delmon?
Yes, this says here that safeguarding is proactive, which means we take the necessary steps to protect children and young people, and if I should also say adults as well, before anything happens to them. So when we say the necessary steps, can somebody write in the chat what we are talking about? What do we mean by take the necessary steps? What do we mean by being proactive? There's a particular word I'm thinking of. Can anyone write in the chat what we mean by taking steps? What steps would you take to avoid something happening?
Everyone's responsibility, I saw. Prevention,
there's a word I'm looking
education.
for that's not come up yet. And there we have it. It just came in just then. It was a risk assessment. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So that's what you do before you do an event to make sure you can avoid any accidents taking place. Okay, thank you for that.
And all these appendixes are, which in the policy are on our website as well. I'm going to be pushing the website a lot today. You can see a section for the risk assessments and all of those things, so you can look at them individually when you need them. This is really, really important. Okay. As it says here, what is safeguarding? You see, safeguarding covers the specific actions we take to protect both children and adults at risk. This is really important. You see, the local church must let children and adults at risk know of their right to talk with an independent person or service, and that independent support available to them. That's really, really important. People know where do they go if they need help. And that's really important. So I guess actions and having the bulletin information, it could be included from time to time in the church. Obviously, a lot of us now and a lot of the churches, which is streamed through the WhatsApp groups, through the media, on the screen. Let people know where they can go. Ideally, if you've got the pictures of your officers in church, and sometimes in the larger churches have the bigger groups, this is really, really important. Display posters, make them child friendly. I know a couple of churches in the conference which do that really, really well. And that's what we want, having things even in the toilets of various places, let people know where they can contact the child line number, for example, Samaritans, all of these things, where so your posters should be displayed in very visible areas where people can see, and across, as I said, the various groups, because we need to remember that abuse of any type occurs when someone has power over another and uses that power to harm. So that's why we need to, I guess, have enough things to keep people alert. This is really important, isn't it, Nella?
And I know we've talked about displaying posters. For those of you who don't have your own church building, sometimes it's good, even if you get a piece of a board and actually a board that you can still advertise your posters and different events on, and it can put up, and then you can actually put it away, take it in the back of a car or in the cupboard. But somewhere where people can still see the information, I think is a really good idea.
That's really, really important. This is a very interesting question. What is the key difference between safeguarding and health and safety? There's a reason why I'm asking this right now. It's really, really, really important. So what is the difference? Well, number one, safeguarding is the protection from people hurting someone else. So it's a people thing. It's about protecting people from being physically hurt by someone else.
Mm-hmm.
But health and safety is different. Health and safety is protection from hazard. So for an environment, so for example, and the reason why I'm saying it, because I'm getting a lot of calls recently, so this is why I'm trying to help you to understand. Someone could be out in the churchyard and for whatever reason they slip, maybe some ice or whatever. That is not a safeguarding issue. It's a health and safety issue. You with me? Whereas if somebody is having some emotional or mental or physical abuse from somebody, that would be classed as a safeguarding issue. So we need to separate the two. And I do understand we have a day where there is a health and safety day. I think part of our insurance does that once a year. And I think last year what tended to happen is people use that opportunity to use it for a safeguarding day as well. The danger of that is the two get mixed up. So we are going to plan a safeguarding day. Outside organizations have a day they use in their own church groups. So I think as a church, we need to do that. So I'm going to look at a date sometime in the summer when we can have that date as a yearly date to highlight safeguarding. I think it's really good, but we need to separate the two. And especially because of the number of calls I'm getting recently, it's really important. So I think that would help. I don't know if you want to add to that one, but I think that would help to know. So hopefully, yes, you've got it. It's all clear. Brilliant. Praise God. Okay, question can sometimes be asked, what is abuse? Now, this is a good definition here. It says abuse is the violation of an individual's human rights and civil rights by another person or persons, it can be more than one, through the misuse of power and control. Abuse is the violation of anything that has control, and that control doesn't always have to be physical. It can be emotional, it can be manipulation, mental, whatever. But anybody what's, I guess, acting with a powerful way over someone else's rights to stop them from functioning normal and being safe, that is abuse. And that is something we need to kind of be aware of. It also must, as leaders, we need to be really careful, I guess, how we say things and how we do things, and you know, how we behave as well within our church. And that is a real important thing, because when we think of that powerful statement we just read there.
So now we're going to be just going to some definitions. So when we talk about a child or young person, the term child relates to any person under the age of 18 with whom the church has contact through any of its services. So your teenager there, 17-year-old, may like to think of themselves as an adult, but according to the definition, she's still classed as a child, and is still open to abuse. And I think what we have to also remember, yes, they're growing, yes, they need more responsibility, but they are still classed as children. And also, just to bear in mind, the frontal lobe does not fully develop until at least a child is 25. A person is 25 years old. When they're about 25, research shows that the frontal lobe is fully developed, and that's where they can make informed, clear, important decisions.
So in other words, what we need to remember there, our young people, and I know as they're getting older, you have to give them that space and all of that, but remember they need our care, they need our protection. And sometimes, because we see them as big young people, we may think, oh, well, they're okay, they can fend for themselves. They're vulnerable, and we need, as leaders, I'm just saying this is the best way for you to understand, we need to look out for them. Believe it or not, during the very first, my term in office, and throughout this, I'm in my second term now, throughout this, I'm getting calls all the time, talking to young ladies, talking to people, how they feel victimized, how they feel some say they feel they don't feel safe to come to church anymore, because some of the people who they used to know when they was growing up, invite them to their home, feel, go for dinner. Those very people now are making suggestions to them. Sometimes married men, older men, it's real serious, this. And we need to have a bit more discussions on what is a healthy and what is unhealthy relationships. Our young people need to feel safe. And it is our responsibility to create those safe environments. And I have heard so many stories which concern me. And I do not want any young lady or young man feeling that it's not safe, or who's this person going to approach them in an inappropriate way. That is not where church should be, and we need to address it, brothers and sisters. And I every time we go and do our programs now, I am saying the importance of having those discussions. Maybe AYS is of good relationship. What is a healthy relationship? How should we behave? How should we treat those? This is really, really important. So I really want to stress this point, because I think it's vital that we address this, definitely.
Okay, so who is an adult at risk? Okay, so it's a person then who is 18 years and over and is unable to safeguard their own well-being, property rights, or other interests. A person affected by disability, mental disorder, illness, or physical or mental infirmity. And if I just say that at this point, we shouldn't really be making assumptions. Because just because a person has a disability doesn't automatically mean that they are at risk of harm. And likewise, someone may have a disability and is at risk, but then show no outward signs. Now, bearing that all in mind, the statistics are that if you're a disabled person, you are actually more likely to be abused and exploited. Tends to be by spouse or family relative, which is a very sad thing when it's somebody that you know, but that are the statistics. Let's just go on by saying, if another person's conduct is causing the adult to be harmed, or a person is engaging or likely to engage in conduct which causes or is likely to cause self-harm. And lastly, if a person, it says there, is suffering from a bereavement, struggling with the impact of an abuse or trauma. And I think if somebody is suffering from a bereavement or past abuse, sometimes, sad to say, that they can sometimes neglect themselves, sometimes stop eating, perhaps stop caring for themselves, perhaps staying in bed all day. And this is where I'd say family ministries leaders or people that know the individual can come alongside and support them, because they are technically in a position where they could be abused by somebody who take advantage of them in that position that they find themselves in. Okay, so
yeah, so that is just to go back. Yeah, that is on page 3 and page 95, and on page 95 it gives a lot more about the adult at risk. What does that look like? We've also got a document I've sent you guys on that as well, which we will send you again, at the end of this training, because we've done a whole program on this. Who is an adult at risk of harm? What are abuse and neglect? So we need to protect both, our children and our adults as well. Our older people have a lot of abuse. Unfortunately, sadly, in the church setting, a lot of the cases I get are more probably financial, really. But we need to care for them, the old people, in a safe way. So that's a discussion, we also need to have. So there's actually a document we've drafted on this now, which I've let you guys have, and I will send it out again at the end of the training next week. You will get this, because this is really important that we are following the whole guidance for both adults and children as well. This is really, really good. The other issue is online abuse. What is abuse? What is abuse using social media? Now, online abuse and any type of abuse that happens on the web, whether through social networks, playing online games, or using mobile phones, children and young people may experience cyberbullying, grooming, sexual abuse, sexual exploitation, or emotional abuse. And one thing I would say there, gone are the days when it's sad. We used to worry about what happens when children go outside. A lot of abuse happens now from children in their home. Why? Because many kids have their phone devices, sometimes TVs, various computers in the rooms, and this is a whole subject on its own to actually look at. Right, so indicators of some of the abuse is preoccupation with their mobile phones. If a young person's maybe getting more angry, depressed, frustrated, appears jumpy, nervous when using mobiles, computer or tablets, sudden loss of friends, lack of concentration, self-harming, all of these things, sleep difficulties, appetite. That's on page 9. All of these things are issues which can happen, and we just really need to look out for our young people. Now, it's interesting, this year's Family Ministries program, which we'll be talking to the leaders about next week, Christian Home and Marriage Week, starts from the 14th to the 21st of February, is going to be, the GC have decided to look at online and the effects of online, and how to protect our young people from cyberbullying and all of those things. So part of the series is addressing this very issue. So I'd encourage you, as you see more come out on that, to direct our parents. And there are some programs we're developing as well. Myself and the other one have done something as well already. We've been rolling it out to a few churches about online safety, but this is a big area now, and it's where a lot happens, and we really need to be looking out for it and helping work with agencies as well to help with young people, particularly, but not just younger ones, older ones. It's a mix, but it's primarily, and I think some of it stems from the fact, if you notice, the schools now are trying to cut back, isn't it, on having them phones at school and all of these things. it's all the access they have. And there's so many stories. People have taken their lives. That's how serious this is. So, you know, it's something as a church I think we need to address, have more discussion on, and just work with our youth and try and start to see if we can stem some of this tide, because this is quite serious there. Yeah.
Okay, so we're just moving on now. Forms of abuse. Okay, it says there physical abuse.
Okay, so you know, as it says there, physical abuse. Well, as he says, it can involve hitting, it can involve shaking, throwing, poisoning, burning. So many things there, isn't it? And as one of the indicators there is the use of inappropriate restraint, physical sanctions, incorrect moving or handling techniques, isolation and confinement. So it's really there. Yeah.
And we want you to just write into the chat some of the indicators you might see. So when we're talking about physical abuse, what would be some of the indicators? If you just drop that into the chat as we go through some definitions.
Maybe some of you can call it. I don't know if Iris and Littell, you can perhaps call some things out if you want. Yeah. Okay. So be thinking about that, putting some of the things in the chat there.
So we've got physical harm may also be caused when a parent or carer fabricates the symptoms of or deliberately induces illness.
Okay, so if you could read out some then, please, for us, yeah?
Unexplained bruising, child being withdrawn, shaking, scars, change in personality,
flinching,
Wow.
nervous to
Right.
talk, being jumpy,
Yeah.
swollen eyes,
fractures and some injuries in a child who is not mobile.
Lack of sleep, I saw. Yeah, some really,
Brilliant.
Good.
Thank you for all those responses. And that ties in nicely for us to move on to this next slide, because this just says to us, what are some of the common sites where you would expect an injury to a child? And you can see there, you know, I'm not going to read all of those labels here, but you've got elbows, you've got nose, you've got forehead. So, you know, as children run around, they will knock in and hurt themselves different places. Tends to be those sticky out places, doesn't it? But then this next slide just shows you where those sites are, where you would not normally expect injuries. You know, the inside of the thigh is not a common place for an injury. You know, grass marks around the neck. Again, you know, that part of your neck curves in. You wouldn't be expecting to have injuries there. And it says, again, bruising around the chest. Obviously the genital area, especially for babies. You know, you can see that there's some definite bruising there. Grass marks, looking for grass marks. Also, even with burns, if it's a burn from something, you would notice the patterning is just sort of very rough around the edges. But when it's a clear, defined burn mark, that's because it's been the child or whoever has been there's been an implement used to create that clear line of a burn mark, as opposed to a very blurred area, maybe from an accidental thing.
Definitely. As somebody said, cigarettes, different things can cause that. And you know, it's good to look out for this. I also just want to acknowledge, I know Wendy made a shared a book, which if we'll keep hold of that if you can, you know, so we'll try and make sure we can get hold of that available if you need anything like that, because that is a book on internet, I think, and the effects of online. So that is good. Care for the Family have also done something, left to their own devices. So there's material out there. And I think one of the things I will try and do, we're constantly looking to update the site. And because we're talking about some of these issues now, both injury and also internet things. We will, as we go on throughout the year, create some links and things and resources for you to access on the website, which we will start to work with the media team on doing. And I know, Sister Vera, you'll just help us to start rolling that out, because we want to give you the tools to help you, and obviously, like when these just come up with something, if people have come across things, it's good to share, because that's how we grow, isn't it? In the internet, I know for me, is something, yes, I can use, but I'm not as advanced as some of our young people would be, for example, and some of us aren't that good, and our young people growing up are quite ahead of us in many, many things. So I guess all the help as parents you can get, that is going to be of help to you. And we want you to have some resources. So that's something we'll look at developing as we go on over the year, because I think it's really important. And we've just got to move with the issues which are current, and that's what we are trying to look at here as well.
I think it's just worth it, before we just move on to the next slide, just to bear in mind, I know we did talk, a lot of these slides talk about bruising, grass marks. The darker your skin, the harder it is to necessarily see any bruising or grass marks. But one thing for sure, you can see that if it's, I've always said, if it's a very hot, 30-degree weather, and you've got all of your young people with shorts and t-shirt, and there's somebody in your group who's got everything covered up, their arms and their legs all covered, that's a bit of a strange way to be dressing in extreme hot weather. So that would perhaps be cause for concern. Also, you may not see no bruising, but if another child goes to touch the child and they're flinching away, or they're saying, don't touch me there, so that's an indication that there's some sort of bruising or some sort of pain that the child is experiencing in that area. So there's just things like that to bear in mind for those with darker skin tones.
Yeah, that's really, really important. And we're looking here forms of abuse, and particularly we just highlighted one, page 4 to 11 of the policy list, a good range there, but this is just one aspect we've taken here, the sexual abuse, which can include rape, indecent exposure, sexual harassment, inappropriate looking or touching, sexual teasing or innuendos, sexual pornography. That's a big area as well, with young people's subjection to pornography or witnessing sexual acts. That can affect you, quite a way. But I've just used that one there, but I don't know, maybe you'd like to just put in the chat some other indicators of abuse. Would we like to put that in? Just in the chat, because I want you to be doing some work here as well. Peer on peer, FGM, I'm seeing a few things. Appropriate conversation, some things are coming up here, which is really good. So there's a range of indicators, isn't there? I don't know if you can see things, guys, you want to call out to us.
Someone suggested the obvious one, an unwanted pregnancy. There's gaslighting, sexualized language and behavior, repeated urinary tract infections, over familiarity, inappropriate conversations, a full supervision of an adult, and not allowed to mix freely with others.
Yeah, there's a range of things. I like inability to concentrate. There's a lot of factors here, isn't it? And I guess it's about being aware and trying to look out for these things. That is the important thing, really. So the prevalence of abuse. I mean, these some very interesting statistics. Remember that 1 in 20 children in the UK have been sexually abused. That's quite significant, isn't it, really? And over 90% of sexually abused children were abused by someone they knew. That could be a family member or uncle, a grandparent, babysitter. And that is really, really significant. That's really, really significant. And there's over 33% of children abusing children, around a third. That's really a lot. And sometimes these are ones who, these are adults, these are people they've known. If a child witnesses abuse, anything, it constitutes anything sexual, anything wrong, which is inappropriate, I should say, that constitutes abuse. So we need to be thinking, what are our children looking at? What are they seeing? How are we protecting them now? Well, I should have probably put on now, and we normally show this, and I'd forgotten to put this in today, because I'm trying to condense it because I know it's Officer Training Day. We have a video called Pants, which is really good because it illustrates how somebody can approach a young person in a wrong way. Now, this video I will send out to all of you as well. Sister Vera, just remind us as we do it, as the sending out. We'll send out to it. I'm not sure if it's been put on our website yet. I'm going to make sure it is, because it needs we need that link on as well. But that's a really good video. But there's a lot of videos like that which help bring awareness, and particularly from a children's point of view. Yeah.
Okay, so we're moving on. We're going to be talking about domestic abuse. So again, if you can write down in the chat what some indicators are, I'm just going to be putting here a bit of a short, in the way of a short description. So it says here, domestic abuse is any pattern of controlling, coercive, threatening or violent behaviour between people aged 16 or over and whom are or have been in an intimate relationship or are family members. And it says that it can be a single incident or a pattern of incidents and includes abuse that is physical, emotional or psychological, sexual, financial, coercive or controlling behaviour. And it's very, very, as you can see, it covers a lot of the different abuses. Domestic abuse normally starts out with emotional abuse, where the perpetrator uses certain language and certain behaviour to undermine the person, make them feel that they're not worthy, that they're ugly. They demean them with lots of different ways. Obviously, the physical indicators, I'm sure you can be aware of, of the marks, the withholding the money, the intimidation. And I think as well, it's worth bearing in mind that children who experience domestic abuse directly can also experience it indirectly. So they might not be around, but when they come home from school, they can see that things have been broken. They can see there's a mark on mom or dad that wasn't there before. They can see the dent in the door, and the fact is, if children are in households where domestic abuse is taking place, there are so much research out there that lets us know that children are in danger in such households. And so you are legally bound to report it, because ultimately those children, they lose sleep. Sometimes they're not eating properly. They don't concentrate at school. And sometimes they can have a change in behaviour where they start being aggressive themselves. So if I could just ask, is there anything been put in the chat in the way of indicators of domestic abuse?
Okay, let's have a look. We have withholding money, low self-esteem, cancelling plans with friends or family, excuses, being unkempt, name calling, gaslighting, abusers refusing to take responsibility for the damage they've done to their partners, effect on the children of the family, controlling behaviour, degrading, humiliation, name calling, visible bruises, one person doing all the talking, not feeding the children properly, inability to concentrate, fear of other people knowing.
Well done, everyone.
Wow.
That's very good.
Thank you.
And I think it's worth saying that, obviously, well, not obviously, but somebody who's in this sort of situation, you as an outsider might say, gosh, why don't they just leave? But statistics show again that because of the nature of the abuse, they find it very, very difficult to leave. And sometimes it's not just about telling them you should leave, but sometimes supporting them to say, I'm here for you, you need to talk, but also signposting them to those different agencies. Lots of agencies out there that will give support to people suffering with domestic abuse.
Yeah, it's important as a church, we do link up with our local agencies in our area. Also, I tried this training because it's online. We didn't really quote too many acts, but I think it's really important to perhaps mention this one. Under the Domestic Abuse Act of 2021, children are recognised as victims in their own right. You need to remember that. If they see, hear, or experience the effects of domestic abuse, and that's important. So there's been a lot of acts throughout the period of safeguarding. We'll go a little bit more in our normal training. We don't want to fill you with all that today. But, and so things have been put in place to, I guess, help protect. And this has come out more as a result of things which have happened in the past. That's why these things keep coming up. So it is there. And, we mustn't be afraid. We need to be working with some of the local agencies, and there's a lot of agencies which work with churches as well. So it's important that we know where to sign people through. It's not because we as a church can do everything, because we cannot. And it would be wrong of us to be able to claim that we can. But we just have to sometimes guide and be there for situations which come up, and use that support which is there. And I think when it is needed.
Some statistics, over 27,000 children were identified as needing protection. That's a figure that was in 2017. 1 in 5 children have been exposed to domestic abuse, very high statistics, and 130,000 children live in households with high risk domestic abuse. Very sad statistics.
Remember, both male and females can be abused. I think that's important, isn't it, to stress.
Actually, put these up.
Yeah.
So these are some of the just very quick definitions for these different other abuses: psychological abuse, financial and material abuse. They're all in the document. Modern day slavery. I'm sure you must have heard on the news. Was it this week? I think last week, this week, of the woman who had been literally enslaved for 25 years, forced to work for a woman who had her 10 children. And neighbours around said they did see the woman some time ago, but not seen her for a long, long while. Basically, the windows and doors were locked in the house. And the woman who had carried out this atrocity, when on the news we saw her, she didn't even bat an eyelid. She didn't really care. So slavery is going on still today. Sad to say, but now this woman has been freed, and hopefully will get to live a bit of a life. But she was literally lived. They showed you, didn't they, the camera footage of her little squalid room that she was living in. So sad to say, these abuses are alive and kicking.
Yeah.
And we have to be on the lookout, even for our neighbours, of what's going on, because this was happening right next door, and neighbours were unaware.
And that is very sad. But any type of abuse, it can be emotional abuse, any type of abuse that scares somebody, that humiliates somebody, that isolates somebody, a child, it is abuse. And we have to look out for the signs, and this is why it's bringing some of these other things up here. Discriminatory abuse. Take some photographs of this. We'll send you some of this. We're kind of laying the foundation here. We're going to go into some more detail of how to handle things when it happens, but this is just something I feel it's important to highlight. I think somebody mentioned that neglect neglect is a good one, really. You know, if somebody's unhappy, not uncared for, being withdrawn, aggressive, having lingering health problems or injuries, stealing, low self-esteem, development delay, all of these things are significant of neglect. And sometimes abuse is not just one off, it can be multiple as well. But that is the other thing. We need to think of it. So it's not just one person affected. Sometimes it can ripple down into other members of the family, other situations, you know. So we don't just need to look at single instances. We need to look at the holistic things here and see what can potentially happen and be looking out for individuals. But that's the important thing, and that's really the best we can do, I think, isn't it, as a church, really? Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so we just want you to engage now, and we're going to put some statements up. We want you to let us know, are they true or are they false? Use your reaction buttons. So we have the reaction buttons at the bottom toolbar. So the first statement here, oops, hold on.
Great, yeah.
Bruises on a child. It says there, bruises on a child, shins and knees are always suspicious of abuse. Can you just write down in the chat, is that true or is that false? Can you put down in your chat, what's your response?
False, I'm seeing.
Or you can put down with your reaction buttons.
So,
yeah, you can either, okay. If you're using your thumb,
thumb is true, is it?
You agree with it. The thumb is that you agree with it, isn't it?
Okay, so. Okay, some thumbs down, some don't agree. So I'm seeing a few faults, seeing a few thumbs up. Oh, a few down ones here now coming up on the screen.
Okay, so there didn't seem to be that many reactions. I was expecting a bit more reactions.
I don't know. Are you guys seeing anything that tells Sister Vera?
Well, you can see the odd one or two. Not many. We need to have everyone making a vote. You can't sit on the fence.
I think a lot of people are putting false in the chat.
Okay. We've got some in the chat. Good. And well done if you wrote false, or you get a thumbs down, or you put an X. It is false because those actual areas are common sites of accidental injury. Okay, so they're common sites, so it is not something to be suspicious about. Okay, that's now you've warmed up. Let's do statement 2. Sexual abuse can be committed by someone the child knows and trusts. Can you give your reaction to that, please? Sexual abuse.
Seeing some true and yes. I'm not seeing anything.
Okay, I think that seemed to be a better response this time around. I can see a lot more responses. So the answer.
Yeah. So now just letting people respond. There's loads more coming up here. Very interesting. Am I seeing this correct, guys? Most of them seem to be saying true.
Yeah. Most people are saying true.
I think that is really, really good. Yeah, because it is true. Most abuse is carried out by individuals they know. That's the reality. That's the sad reality here. It's not the strangers. But it tends to be people they know. And that is actually true. Yeah, so you did well on that one.
Okay, our next one here. So again, let's have some responses. Failing to provide adequate food, clothing, supervision, or medical care may be neglect. What have we got for that?
The majority of people are saying true.
Yeah. Okay. So that is true, really. Yes, you are correct. Basically, any form of neglect is really a persistent failure to meet basic needs. I can hear some background noise, so maybe.
Can we sit down if you, can we sit down and what football can we?
Yeah, maybe if we could just mute whoever. Yeah.
Okay, and our last one, so this is our last one. You're doing very well. I'm
You're
very
really good,
impressed.
actually. Yeah.
It says domestic abuse only applies when physical violence has occurred between adults. Can you give your responses for that one? Okay.
That's them.
All right.
Mm.
Very good.
Everyone has said false.
I think we've got some. Yeah, thank you. That's. I think we've got a lot of people on the ball here. Then, possibly what did you say?
Yeah, as we know, domestic abuse includes emotional, psychological, sexual, financial abuse, and coercive control. And it doesn't necessarily require physical violence. But we do know that children who witness or experience the effects of domestic abuse are also considered victims. That's just to clarify on that point. So well done.
Yeah. Just in case you didn't realise, we are doing these little questions here, which is good. It's a good exercise for you, but this is not the actual test. There will be a test which you'll be sent a paper out, and you will need to complete that. That probably will be sent out most likely Tuesday now. Give us time to collate everything before we get all the stuff sent to you. And I'll repeat this again, but I'm just saying it now for those who hear. You need to stay to the end, because after we break, when we come back, we're going to be looking at some very interesting ways of how we deal with when incidences have happened, how we follow that through. And you need to get that test paper back within 14 days. After that, you'll have to come back on another course, because we really have got too many things running throughout the conference now, so we need to get them back to you. But I will explain a bit more of that when we send it, but that's going to be definitely coming out. So we're looking at some categories of abuse as well. It's not an exhaustive list. You can see you've got from physical to emotional to financial, to neglect, to bullying, a range of things there, which is listed on pages 4 to 11, and it's a whole section on abuse. And so it's good to familiarize yourself with that, and just be aware, because the reality is some of these abusers will happen to people in the church. That's the reality. But we can't just ignore it and say it doesn't happen to us, because that will take place. So that is just some general things you need to be aware of.
Okay, so this says here, harm to another child. This is some sad statistics once again. More than a third of all sexual abuse of children is committed by someone under the age of 18. And it says that younger children may take inappropriate interactions without understanding how it might be hurtful to others. So because children may have been abused themselves by other children, sometimes they then go on to abuse other children, which means we have to be so very, very careful about just watching the interactions that children have. If this tends to be some sort, especially with Pathfinder groups, even adventure groups, who is actually looking after them? I think you just have to be careful. I know we sometimes have older children helping with the younger children, but just be mindful that this is a very, clear statistic.
Yeah.
It's a third is a lot. And I think if we look at those indicators, if you tend to find a lot of older children seeking the company of younger children and spending an unusual amount of time with them rather than with their own peers, that could be potentially a warning sign. If you have children talking about, or you have secret games and there's secret places, that they play special games. This is about education, isn't it? It's about education from the parent's point of view, to teach their children that nobody should be touching you. Nobody should be touching you in your private places. Nobody should be telling you about keeping secrets. And you'd never be playing touching games. All these sorts of vocabulary needs to be discussed. And if you notice changes in behaviour with children, they're becoming more anxious. Especially when a child is saying they don't want to be left with another person, a younger person, children tend not to lie. So if they're feeling uncomfortable around certain individuals, that could be, again, a warning sign. But there's a lot of information there on page 6. You don't have the space, page 6 and 7, to write all of those points down, but it's really important that you familiarise yourself with those points.
Really, really important, yeah. And also, what I would suggest here, we sometimes in our churches, it's good, we have all the young people who are prepared to do teaching and working with the younger age group, but statistically at the moment, we're finding more abuse is happening peer on peer pressure. So what you just need to be aware. What I am concerned about, I'm not saying it happens in every church. I know we're short of teaching officers. We try not to let a situation that it's only that young person working with other young people without any type of supervision at all, any time. That is the scary thing, because we need to let people go and develop, but monitor it, because I have had 1 or 2 cases come to the office. And that's where it's been, an older 13, 14-year-old with a younger 10, because there was actually their teacher in the class, what I'm saying? So what I'm saying, I'm not saying every situation, but I'm saying we need to be aware. And, it's very concerning when I'm hearing that young people are just left, no supervision, no support ever, on occasion, but never. Yeah. That is not a good place to be. And so we need to be a bit more vigilant in that. Right.
Pastor John,
Pastor, do you have a question in the chat?
Yes.
There are a couple of questions there. I think you're going to talk about one, Natalie, and the other one that was higher up. And we wondered when you wanted to answer questions.
We'll try and do it as we go along, but we're coming near to the end of the first section. But go on. What was the question?
The first one was about outside agencies being used. Why are we using outside agencies? Shouldn't the abuse be dealt with within the church? I think Natalie has the other one.
Yeah. It comes into this one.
Yeah.
We're going to discuss now. When we're talking about outside agencies, what we are talking about is there are certain things sometimes will happen, like maybe the child line or situations which can happen to children or adults or whatever. And sometimes you need that they need to be referred to for some support as well. It's not everything we can necessarily always do in the church. And it would be wrong of us to think we can take every single thing on, because sometimes when people have got tremendous trauma, yes, we have a counselling service, we may have things there to help, but sometimes you have to work, particularly when cases are coming live, you have to sometimes work with those agencies which are local to you and around and can bring support. And we do not know always what cases are coming in, and sometimes once it's been reported, that is where those services will get involved. So it's not necessarily wrong to work with, but you have to look at what's in your particular area. And it depends on the nature of the abuse and what's happening. But there are some organizations which are very skilled in dealing with some situations, and it's that sense we need. Now, this report here, which we have, this was an interesting report done, and this might help us to be thinking about what I'm saying there a little bit more. It was an independent inquiry on child sexual abuse, and it looks at child protection in religious organizations and settings. Now, it's very interesting what this report actually highlights, and I will send you the report so you can look at it. These were some of the common things. It says victim blaming, not openly discussing matters of sexuality, abuse of power by religious leaders, men dominating the leadership, mistrust of non-religious agencies, which is probably what can be happening there, as we said, misusing the concept of forgiveness. Now, fortunately, our church was not one of the churches who was put into the link. However, I will have to say, looking at that report and seeing it, I think if we had have been put in, and we may, now it would be different, they may be doing another one. This was done in 21. Remember, it probably getting time for them to do something else. So I think our church probably will become a part of this next one. But ultimately, I'm not too convinced some of the things I've read in there would be much different with ourselves as well. Remember, we have a moral responsibility to protect. And sometimes some of these organizations were morally failing children. And that is really, really, really key. Because we need to ask ourselves, where are we? In terms of when things happen, we understand that forgiveness is important, and it's important sometimes people be reconciled as well. But yes, that can happen, but there are also consequences, and forgiveness does not mean you're going to put yourself back into the situation. Now, I did a program with very early on in my departmental role, and that's when it was just under the family ministry. Safeguarding wasn't as prominent as it is now as a department in its own right. Back in 22, we did something with Judy Clements and the SEC Children's Ministries Department, and this is some of the things came out of that report. So, some of the situations, it said some religious groups were morally failing children. That was important, that came out. One of the areas was cultural acceptance. You know, we have the policy spare the rod, spoil the child. Different cultures have different ideas about what constitutes discipline. Fear of reprisal, retaliation, misplaced priorities was another area. Deference, an older person is always right. They do such a wonderful work in the community. How could they have possibly done this thing? Shame culture, that was very, very high on the list. We don't want to bring shame on our church or the family or, you know, on those things. And the other thing was apathy. Apathy was also something which I guess was part of the issue as well. Moral justification. No one is going to tell you how to bring up my children and how I should discipline them in my own home. And then parental ownership. These were just some of the things I put down, which we took out. My child, I decide what happens to them. Need to open discussions in church. Sometimes we need to probably have more discussions. That's what I'm trying to say here in our churches. To say, how do we discipline? And bear in mind as well, we have a church which is culturally changing by immigration. So we have some people come from, some of our countries, which the way of doing child training will be different from how it is in the West. And maybe there's a conflict there. And how do we manage that? So it's a mixture of all of those things need to take place. And understanding how some of the services work. For example, social services, social workers. I have a good friend of mine who's a social worker. He's not an Adventist, he's a Christian. Oftentimes they would come to talk to churches. So sometimes because many people fear social work because they think the priority of the social worker is to take the children away from them. That's not necessarily true. I know my social worker friend of mine will always say, where possible, they want families to stay together, and we have to try and work. So that's an agency you can sometimes work with. If you can find someone who's a Christian who can come and talk to you, or let's have those discussions. But to totally isolate ourselves and say we're never, ever, ever going to need, unfortunately, the reality is sometimes we do. And certainly when you have cases, those of churches who have had cases come up, sometimes even if it's a perpetrator and the perpetrator is then going to be in the church, come back in the church, they need to work with their local probation officer or service. So in that sense, you do need to have some interaction. So it's unavoidable, really, and it's about those safe spaces and creating those safe spaces, and that's what we're basically saying there. So I hope that helps. Helps us to be thinking about it. But I will send you this document, and you can by all means go through it and have a read, because it's a really, really good document, definitely.
Okay, the second question, Pastor,
Yes.
is it the church's responsibility to address inappropriate touching stroke behaviour with children, or is it down to the parents?
Pastor John, sorry, Pastor John, it's Becky. So,
Hi, Elder Becky. How are you doing?
hello, yes, how are you? I wanted to come in, sorry, on the previous question, if that's
Yes.
okay. I know,
That's fine.
Brother Jotam also had his hand up as well. I know he's a social worker. The first question, I think the reality, we live in this country, we are not just a church, but we are also a charity.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to think that way as Adventists. We are not just a church. We are a church, but also legally we're registered as a charity. And there's some legal requirements that we have to meet. It's not about the choice, well, yeah, I can work with this organization or we can't work with this. There are some legal responsibilities or requirements we have to fulfill. In terms of the areas of safeguarding, we have the local authority has statutory responsibility for safeguarding. So our churches, all churches, sit within a local authority. So we have to get ourselves to work with those people. It's not about choosing whether we do it or we don't. We have to work with them. Because obviously, if a safeguarding issue comes up, ultimately they have to pick those things up.
Right.
Why not build relationships with them before things go wrong? For me, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. That's so true, Elder Becky. Yeah, that is. I mean, you summed it up there. What you've said. Yeah, but thank you for that. Definitely. Yeah, I agree. Amen. As somebody has said.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Can I? It's Jotham here from.
Oh, hi, Jeff. Yes.
Hi. I had a hand up earlier. When you spoke about I think that was online. When we're talking about children online stuff. So I was wondering whether do we have anything, or are we considering anything in relation to the online safety training for parents and for children, because this is something that's going on in schools, and is in line with the Online Safety Care Act of 2023. So it's where children at school are being probably trained how to be safe on the internet, on all these things, because the reality of things today is that when children, you can put all the safety onto their devices and stuff, but there are some these evil associates that obviously infiltrate that while they are watching something, whether it could be a church song on YouTube, and then these adverts pop up. So I wonder if we have got anything, or are we planning as a conference, as BUC, to have specific training under the safeguarding for the children and for the parents? I think this is very critical and important that we have those kind of sort of like training as risk assessment really indicate there's high risk because our children are using devices every day, and not all parents are aware of that. And obviously, for myself being a social worker, I'm aware of quite a number of all those kind of things happening every day through my profession and stuff. So yeah, it was just to see whether we have got anything. If not, I think it would be very important that we consider that as churches to have those trainings. I'll give an example. For example, when we had the Pathfinder, it was the Pathfinder day in Winston Green. We had one of the police officer coming to talk about the drugs and all sort of things around children. So yeah, that was my thought, and that's what I was stressing about.
Thank you, Jocelyn, for that. Yes, we you know, it's something we need to do more of. As I mentioned earlier on, it's interesting. GC for the Family Ministries program coming up in a couple of weeks, you know, in the 30th to the 21st, is looking a little bit on that, and just from a biblical point of view, some things, which is going to be good. So that's going to be some good material. We have actually developed a program we call Left to Their Own Devices. We've been taken out to the churches. I guess what the area is now, probably more global sort of approach needs to be done. And it's something, you know, definitely take on board, have discussions with the BUC to see how we could probably, you know, formalize that a little bit more. So there is some material there, but it's actually now a way to try and work it. And of course, like you say, working with other places, like you said, you invited the police, and, you know, that is something. So this is an area which we have to address, and it's current. And we are looking, as we're trying to look at the safeguarding generally, from a safeguarding point of view, it could be something now we could kind of probably start to spearhead in terms. I'm also considering, as departmental director, to look at whether it can happen this year. We don't know yet, but we're looking to probably have a safeguarding weekend, you know, where we have a conference. So this is kind of maybe the sort of areas we need to be looking at. It's got to be the areas which are pertinent. So please come back to us and let's have some discussion at some time outside of this, yeah? But I think it's a valid point. But that's where we are at the moment. So there is some things out there, but maybe it's not been as formally done, and it's something we're looking at. I'm conscious the time is going near.
Can I just quickly ask this last question? It's about a child having a medical diagnosis and they rely on faith and prayers to make things right. What advice would you give to such individuals?
Well, yeah. It is a deep one, and I think probably more, rather than answering it all here, we might need to just send something on this. But, you know, I'm always of the philosophy in faith. It does say faith without works is dead, isn't it? So we have to demonstrate our faith by action, you know, and throughout the Bible, if you look at things, everything happens with God works with human action to make things happen. Moses, when the Red Sea parted, it was the action of him with Israel trusting God to do what he said he would do, and to step forward. And sometimes that it requires that. So having help with the faith that God's going to give the people the skill to help you with what you're doing and praying, that is part of faith, you know. But I think it's a very good question, and maybe it might be good to just try and answer that a little bit more fully. But it's on that basis that we don't have blind faith. So it's not about when God has given skill or given somebody something to help you to do something, it will be blind faith to say, Lord, you do it, and God's already provided the skill of the person to assist you in that, and it has to be a partnership. So to come out of that, I guess you're putting both yourself at risk and maybe also your child at risk. So it's about having that balance. And I think we need to be thinking about that, because our faith is an active faith. It's not passive. It's not just saying, Lord, you do this, but I'll sit back and do nothing. There's nothing I have to do. Sometimes we have to do something in being prepared to just step out for God to act in the way he wants to act for us in our lives. But it's a deep one. So let's have more discussion. But I hope that's beginning to help us to start thinking about it, at least, definitely. So
Okay.
yeah.
Pastor, before you carry on, have you seen the comment in the chat where someone says, "Hi, Pastor Francis, I have a question pertaining to child-on-child discrimination that is apparently eminent in our churches. This is where by some children who were born in the UK or have stayed in the UK longer than others display this superiority complex over their counterparts who have recently located from other continents. It is often unsaid or subtle, but it is prevalent in our churches. What is the church going to do to help in the integration of children to deal with superiority and inferiority complex? We have a high propensity to lose young people who don't feel welcome, especially when they have just relocated from other continents."
That's a deep one, and I'm not going to try and answer that in the short time we have right now. But what I will come back to it. What I would also say is, like anything, that's why we need to have more education on things, and that's why I'm saying use the AY time. We need to be educated. We need to appreciate, as different cultures mix in, tensions are going to naturally happen, but it's how we. This is where the education process comes in, and as having more discussions. That's the starting point. And I think I'll hold it at that for now, because I know we just want to move in so we can go to the next section. But it's something, we can come back and give you a little bit more. But I think that is the starting point that we need to look at.
Pastor, did you address the question of, is it the church's responsibility to address inappropriate touching or behaviour with children, or is it down to the parents? That was another question we had.
Okay. We're going to move on because of time, and I'm coming back to that one in a minute. Okay, let's move on. Yeah.
I'm just going to just briefly go through these slides. So it's just saying there, what is grooming? Grooming is when someone builds a relationship of trust and emotional connection with a young person so they can manipulate, exploit, and abuse them. And if you notice there, it's got page 3, there's a lot of information there on grooming on page 3. But obviously we can see there that's not what a groomer looks like. Groomers look like everyday people. They look like you and me. And the fact is, they are going to want to do anything they can to win your trust.
Okay, so some of the grooming tactics, as you can see, it starts off with level here.
Because they ask some questions, people can respond in the
They
chat.
will first target the victim, and then they'll gain their trust, and then they'll fulfill a need.
So they might.
I can see a lot of background noise, so if we could try and put our things on mute, thank you. And then they'll isolate the victim, and sometimes when they get the victim on their own, then that is where all that sexualization in the relationship, and that really then leads to just control. And that's on page 71. I mean, that is a real serious aspect, and it happens. And you can groom people with gifts, with toys, with many, many different things, isn't it? But they will use those kind of things. Now, these are some of the signs that
again, these are just something you'll find on page 71.
Yeah, definitely.
These are the things to be aware of, look out for, changes of behaviour, underage drinking, older boyfriends and girlfriends, etc., etc. And a very useful section, again on page 72, how to prevent grooming, how to keep your children safe, teach them about good and bad secrets, help them to be assertive so they're not being disrespectful, to their elders. If they need to say the word no, they're going to say no in a respectful way, but teach your children how to say no. If they need to say no, teach them about the importance of consent. That's very important. And I think that last point, yeah.
I think consent is important. Make sure children know what is healthy and unhealthy touch. All those things. Know where children are. It's really all important, and I think that's important as well. In the sense of grooming, you know, as far as possible, ensure that when we're having programs in church, when we're doing, I guess, events in church, it's better that more than one person is working with a child. You know, it's not ideal to have, say, one person always in the room on their own, because sometimes it's when those one-on-one things happen that it leads to problem. And also, I guess, when we're doing activities in church as well, it's probably good to consider the different genders in matching those activities up. You know, so for example, in changing areas, I put something down here about having 2 adult provision applies in changing areas, in the toilets and those things. You've got to think about these things to try and minimize the attempts and situations.
Okay, so very quick question. That I want you to just quickly share with your icon. Grooming always involves physical contact from the beginning. Is that true or false? Just quickly give us a reaction. Grooming always involves physical contact from the beginning. And then after this slide, we literally have 4 slides left before we go into the DBS section. So we're going to just use our last 10 minutes to just do our last 4 slides. And I think I can see, everybody is doing some good reactions. It is false. And the reason is that grooming often starts with non-physical behaviors, such as giving attention, gifts, compliments, online messages. And the aim, of course, is to build trust, so they won't start with that physical contact. Well done, everyone. So now we're going to just talk through some of the information here on safeguarding person.
Right. So the safeguarding person, or known as the safeguarding leaders in many cases, is leads on safeguarding matters on behalf of the church, acts as an advocate on behalf of children and adults, deals with concerns and suspicions of abuse, keeping accurate records. So some sort of record keeping has to be done, you know, ensures the safeguarding policy and guidance is followed. And that means by doing some online training. That's what that means. That means you've got to physically do some sort of training there, have there. And that is really important things. And also sometimes you're going to have to work with the agencies. Now, as a safeguarding lead, you will also, you know, from what we teach you here, we will send you something to help you be able to sort of locally, that's in your own church, give a bit of training as well, but also create awareness and create space and be there. And that's what we will try, would like you to be thinking about. So that is some of the responsibilities outlined in the safeguarding lead. Now, the next one, I think, are you going to look at that among responsible person?
So this next one here is a responsible person.
Page 12 and page 40 of your book.
Yeah. They're the head of every department, and because you're the head of a department, you tend to be the first port of call if there are any concerns. You keep accurate records of disclosure communications and ensure that the team completes all their DBS checks. You support the team in fulfilling their roles and safeguarding responsibilities, maintain safe working practices across their department.
And I think it's important to realise here, as the responsible person within the board, that is the reason why every board member, head of department, needs to be DBS. At any one time, anyone can come to you with an issue because you are the head, you are the leaders, you are like trustees. So it's very important. So it may not be your role necessarily in your board is probably that involved, but you are seen as the head, and that's the reason why. So I hope this clarifies that. But a lot of people don't realise you're all responsible people, and you could be the one which has, is approached. So it's very, very important that is realised. And sometimes the heads of department don't always grasp that, but that's a very, very important role. And then the next one, which we're going to be having a bit more discussion in a little bit, is the disclosure clerk. And as it says here, responsible for undertaking safeguard administrative tasks, organises disclosure barring service, issues roles descriptions relating to safeguarding, maintain up-to-date lists, a lot of record keeping, a lot of safety. And I know because of the new rules now coming in place of keeping documents and how we're going to do that. So I'm going to be giving you a bit of suggestions in that as we go along. But that is really, really important. And okay, somebody's saying they have to be off camera. That's okay. That's fine because of driving. I understand that. Okay, so that's really important. But it's also important, I think, can we just highlight this one here? I think it's important as well. Yeah. When people are going to be put in position in churches, this is a thing. I know we always have a lot of issues on this one. The recommendation is wait a minimum of 6 to 12 months before giving new and previously unknown members a church office. So that means a new person will be somebody just come into church fresh, newly baptized. Don't let's put them straight into office, please. It's a dangerous thing to do. Really. It's not good for them. It's not good for us. And trust me, when I've seen it done, I then get issued or calls or something's happened or this has happened. It's not advisable. Unknown members, it's one thing. If somebody has been with you and the unknown member been with you for a couple of years, that's different. But if they're unknown to you, just turned up, they want to move the membership, which is the right thing to do. Let's not give them an office. Sometimes the problem is, as churches, we feel we haven't got people to fill the post, so we just need to bring this person in. But you need to get to know who this person is. From a safeguarding perspective, it's very risky. So that's something I would really, really, really encourage you. Now, I appreciate we haven't been able to answer all the questions fully yet. I am going to come back and address some of the questions we have. Now, a point somebody's asked there, do we need to consider whether or not I missed that. There was some point Wendy just made there, Natal. I just totally missed it, but it was a question and it just flashed off again. So if we have any points, but
it says, do we then need to consider whether or not we need the post if we don't have enough people to fill the post?
Yeah. And that, I think, is a very pertinent question, which answers itself. Sometimes it's best to do without the post, isn't it? Rather than have something and put a situation in risk, because people need time to settle in. And this is good advice. It's not been hard, but it's been good advice. And if we don't follow it, it's when I always find with these things, it's when something happens, people say, if only. But let's not be the people who say if only. Let's be the people who are being proactive. That's what we want to be. So just let me reiterate, because I probably forgot to do this at the very beginning as well. This first part of the presentation, it was set to happen from between 10 to 12 o'clock. From 12 to 1 o'clock, you have a break. Now, I did send a poster out, and I think in the quickness of doing it, I probably made an error. I might have said from 2 we'll start back. No, we will start back again at 1 o'clock. We're going to have an hour's break, but in this hour, I want to have a chat with all of you who are DBS clerks. Now, I'm hoping there's some of you online. I don't know who is who. So those of you who are not DBS clerks, you can turn your cameras off and go and get some break, have a little break. But we will come back at 1 o'clock to finish off the training, where we're going to be looking at answering a few more questions and going into the final sections, how to deal with things when cases come up. But I just need a bit of time to talk with the DBS clerks, because some of you may be new and some of you also need to just go through the process. So those of you who are, need to keep your cameras on. Those of you who aren't, if you want to have a break, I'm going to stop the recording first and then restart it again to cover this section, and then we'll resume back at 1 o'clock. So we're giving you a little bit of a break as well. Some of us have to carry on with the DBS clerks now, so I'll ask the DBS clerks to make themselves known. So we'll stop and then we'll start it. So we'll see you guys, the majority of you, back again at 1 o'clock, and then we hopefully should finish, I think, quite soon the way we're going. Thank you for attending this first part. Okay, so welcome back, everybody. We are going to start with part 2, which will start to now reinforce some of the things we have actually been discussing. We will, yeah, you just need to go off the video bits. That's all you need to do, yeah. Yeah, so we're just trying to clear up because the video is still on there. So we're just trying to, yeah, we're just trying to get the system back up again. Yeah, that should do it. Okay. So what we're going to try and do here is reinforce. We've been talking a lot about abuse, awareness, and all of those things. So what we're going to try and do now is kind of reinforce some of that by actually beginning to look at some scenarios and then taking you from steps of, if abuse does happen, how do we detect it and what are the steps that we need to follow to do it. So if we go to one of the other ones, yeah, I should do it. Okay, so we've actually got now. Okay, yeah, go to this one here. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. From this slide, yeah. There. Okay, so we just had a bit of technical issues there, but we're going to try and walk you through this scenario. Hopefully you can see it all. I can see a few things on my screen which I'll try and take off, but hopefully it's come out reasonable for you so you can see it. But Adelon, do you want to read this one?
Okay, so what we're going to do, we're just going to, we just have 2 scenarios here. This is the first, and then we've got another one after this. So for this particular scenario, I'm going to read the scenario, and then what I need you to do is in the chat, I want you to just write into the chat what abuse is taking place. And then I'll ask Natalia and I think Iris, if she's still there, just to...
And Sister Vera, yeah.
And Sister Vera, just to read the responses. So what abuse is taking place? So I'm just going to read this out now, okay? So Samuel, aged 9, forgot to take his Bible to church one Sabbath. He was distracted before leaving home with an upset tummy. His angry father refused to allow Samuel to explain and instead shouted at him in front of his friends. "Don't talk back to me. The Bible says you must honor your father and mother. God will punish you. Go to the corner and pray for forgiveness." When the family returned home after church, Samuel's father gave him 6 lashes with a belt, saying, "I need to do this because the Bible says, spare the rod and spoil the child. Now go and kneel upright for half an hour and pray to God and ask that you never forget your Bible again." So can you just write into the chat for us what abuse is taking place? Okay, I can see lots of things coming in.
Sophie was writing as she was talking the other one, which is good. So they look like
all right. So just a few more seconds and I will I think I'm getting some good responses here. I can't see let's see if, I'm not sure if I can see 2, but there are actual 3 abuses taking place here. Some people are getting, I can see 2 mentioned, but there are 3. Those
Some
who
are
haven't
mentioning
responded.
3 now, about it.
So I think basically you're all correct from what I can see. Yes, we have physical abuse because he actually was beaten with a belt. We have emotional or psychological abuse because he was humiliated, he was intimidated and shouted at, especially because, of course, it was as well because it was in front of his friends, which is not a nice thing to do. And of course, we have this spiritual abuse because he's using religious belief to justify violence and threatening punishment from God, and using the Bible to control the child's behavior. So this is not really a good way to use the Bible, is it? So there's 3 abuses which you all mentioned. So well done, everybody. And we're now going to go to our next one.
Okay, so this one, a different scenario here. This is Carly is a 15-year-old junior counsellor who is very keen and active in the Pathfinder Club. So all our Pathfinders, you can relate this one, involved in the joint.
He said he was going to come yesterday.
Hello, sorry. Okay. Corpse Colour Party attends all club sessions, camps, and events. In conversation one day, Carly tells you that one of the male counsellors told her she is special and has a lot of potential. He telephones her twice a week. He gives her extra lessons to help her class work and with marching and drilling after club sessions or before anyone arrives. Carly feels more confident with his help, and he has told her he can teach one person at a time. Okay. What would you say is taking place here in the chat? I can see some things. How old is the male?
Yeah, everyone said, most people are saying it's grooming.
Grooming.
And then there's a few people have said sexual as well.
Yeah. Definitely. I would agree. You seem to be coming up all practice grooming, yeah. Sexual, yeah, and lots coming up there. Yeah. Definitely grooming is taking place. Because an adult really is building I would probably say use the word exclusive relationship, and that's where it always starts. Seeing her before it starts, giving her excessive attention, all of those things, one-on-one contact. It's also, I guess you could say, there's an emotional manipulation as well. The very fact he used the word, it says he was trying to make her feel special, so she feels good, but that's appealing to her emotions. And of course, as a counsellor, he is breaching his boundaries. Now, I know for our camps we have a lot of counsellors, don't we? Sometimes for things, and I know somebody was asking about the age. Well, obviously this is a young person, but it can also be sometimes peer on peer. So it could be maybe older, late teens, early 20s, working with a younger, because it can start from probably some big pathfinder, it can start from adventurers. This happens a lot now, and that is why it is good. That's why we said it's good to have maybe more than one working, or this one-on-one thing is really important. You've got to protect, as it were, the child from being on their own, alone. You've got to. That also helps reduce the opportunities for abuse and those sort of things. because allegations, sometimes there can be false allegations can come. So it protects as well. So that's why having the two genders, I think, isn't it, working together is important. So it's minimizing these opportunities. You know, and one has to be careful. I can remember, I'm trying to use something practical. I know this is a little different situation, but we have to also try to avoid issues which could look. I remember when I had one of my churches before obviously I was working in the conference, and we was doing a regular, really a nice positive thing for our youth. We was having a Bible study group, and all the youth would come together. And of course, I would have to sometimes pick up some of the young people. And we did have a couple of the guys, but there was a lot of young ladies in there. And I know my elder used to be with me, so we used to do it together as a joint thing, you know. And that was a positive thing, nothing wrong with that in itself. But of course, obviously, a lot of the young people needed a lift home. And I remember one of the nights, it just so happens, I think the young man had been dropped off and there was just all the young ladies. Now, the elder was with me, and I purposely made sure, and I could have easily dropped him home first because he was planning near it and then dropped the rest of the young ladies. But I purposely made sure I dropped all the young ladies off first. And then I went back and took the elder home. You know, you have to protect, or at least let them sit in the back or whatever. You have to try and protect yourself, because even when you're doing something really positive, it can. So we have to think of all those situations, and that's maybe if that's an example I could give you there. But it's about trying to minimize things. But those kind of relationships which happen there with this counsellor can happen a lot very quickly, and sometimes I guess those situations are more common than not. So it's about being sensible there. Yeah.
And I also just add as well, so you're protecting yourself from any false allegations, but I think we also have to say we're protecting the vulnerable child, because what could happen, you know, I'm a decent, trustworthy Christian. So when I meet one-on-one, there's 100% nothing happening. But the fact is, the next person that might meet with them, so you are fine with them, the child's happy with you and nothing's taking place because you're trustworthy. But what we're trying to say, avoid one-on-one, because the next person that might meet with them might not be a trustworthy person and might be a person who will unfortunately abuse them. So it's not that we don't trust you and the church doesn't trust you. It's best to avoid it, because that young person will then be led into a false sense of security, thinking it's okay to have one-on-one meetings. Nothing happens. I'm safe. But it's about avoiding any future one-on-one meetings, because they'll think, well, it's okay to meet one-on-one. And then the next person who they might meet one-on-one, that's where an issue might arise.
I noticed, is it Tanya? I don't know. You just flashed on my screen, so I don't know if there's any others, Mattel, but Tanya, I noticed your hand up. Tanya, do you want to ask the question, or?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes, can now,
Sort to avoid, you say about avoid the one-to-one, but if a child comes to you and wants to speak to you privately, in confidence, then you've got no choice but to do the one-to-one.
No, you've got to it's about safeguarding. And I think it's about sometimes having yourself, you can meet with them. You just have to say, well, I just need, I mean, I suppose it depends on the situation. We're talking about long-standing pathfinding meetings and
I think, you know, I hear what Tanya is saying. I think there is a difference between the odd occasion and things, you know, if someone needs to talk to you. At the end of the time, we also need to, you know, I remember a good minister friend of mine used to always say, and particularly with different genders, I think this is the thing you see really. He said sometimes, you know, if they would have to talk to one of the single young ladies and they would come to the vestry, so they wanted a private meeting, he would tend to leave the door open. You with me? You know, it's about I guess it's about trying to create safety. It doesn't mean you don't have the odd discussion now and again, but what I'm saying, it's about creating the safe space. So you have to be practical, and with this, so I hear what you're saying, but it's about creating the safe space, and that's what we're really saying. Oh, thumbs up! Everybody's giving a thumbs up. Okay. Natal, was there any other question that I've missed? Because I'm only seeing what's on my top screen, you see, so I don't know if there's anything.
No, it looks like a lot of people are agreeing with
Becky,
you.
Elder Becky, please.
Yeah, he's just put his hand up.
Yeah, and thank you, Pastor and Sister Tanya. And also sometimes just thinking about if somebody's saying they're speaking in confidence, of course that's important, but it's also being open to them as well, because if they're speaking to you in confidence, what are you going to do with that information? It depends what they're talking about. Are you going to be the end of that conversation? Is thinking and beyond what they are saying, but also being open and honest to them that maybe this conversation needs somebody else to sit in with as well.
And I think if I just quickly comment on that. As a pastor, as you know, pastors are always having to meet with different people for one thing or another. But sometimes you might have, dare I say it, single women who want to meet with the pastor. They've got a very legitimate reason why they want to meet with the pastor. And in situations like that, I know it's been said in the past, it's advisable for the pastor to meet with them, with his wife or with the head deaconess. But for a pastor to be going to visit a single woman's house on his own is not advisable. And even for whoever you are, it's just safer to avoid one-on-one meetings, because you don't know what you're letting yourself in for. So if you go to that person's house because they say it's very important, I need to meet with you, and it's just you, it's her word against yours, and they could make an allegation. This is what we're talking about, avoiding any allegations being made. Okay, so I think we can move on. Yeah. So we're now going to just talk about what we should do. So we've just talked about some scenarios, but what should you do if you've noticed you've had a Pathfinder meeting or whatever you've had, and there's one particular Pathfinder is not gone home. They normally walk home, but they've deliberately held back, and they have spoken to you now, and they've actually revealed to you that there is something going on that they're really upset about. What should we do? Well, we have to know, if you go into your booklets, into your policy, should I say, go into page, if you go to page, it should be on page, I'm just trying to make sure. No, it's 99.
Okay. Oh, you mean the steps? Yeah.
Yeah.
The steps,
Just go to page, and if you go to page 99 at the very bottom of the page, if you go to the bottom of the page, it's not, for some reason, if you go to page 99, it's not really page 72 per se, but go to page 99, it's at the bottom of the page. It does mention it there. And it also on page 72, it sort of mentions it at the top of the page on page 72, if a child will view abuse. It's kind of like got the two places. Mm-hmm. But these are the steps you need to take. So you need to listen very carefully without showing any judgment. And you might be really shocked. And when I say don't show any judgment, be careful of your facial expression, because, you might show real shock and horror as to what they're sharing.
Oh, sorry, Dylan. Somebody said they don't have the booklets. I just wondered, Sister Vera or Natal, could you resend it out on the chat again, please? The policy, because I think that might be an issue. Obviously, sometimes it was sent out earlier on at the beginning, but if some people joined a bit later, they may have missed that. So could you put that back on the chat? But you will get a copy sent to you at the end of this anyway by email. But it's good for you to have it with you now, where you could at least look at it. So if you could just do that for me, thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
In all these pages, is it the safeguarding policy is pages 72 and
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's correct. It's actually in the policy. Yeah.
Yeah, so the second step there is to let them know they've done the right thing by telling you. Don't forget, you've got, the perpetrator saying it's our secret. Don't tell anyone. If you tell somebody, you'll get into trouble, mom and dad will get into trouble, you'll have to be taken away. They will say all sorts to them. And they are going to be quite fearful. So really reassure them that they've done the right thing. Then you've got the step 3, tell them that it's not their fault. Again, sometimes, you've got to remember, these are children, they're under 18. Sometimes they may have said, oh, it's my fault because I was going to their house, or I was doing X or doing Y, or because I said yes to them when they said such a... Whatever they are going to say to you, it's not their fault. They are underage. So it's never going to be their fault. So don't make them feel bad. Just encourage them to just share what they need to share with you. Let them know that you take them seriously. Sometimes, again, the perpetrator will say, well, no one's ever going to believe you if you ever try to say anything. They will say all sorts to them. So you have to let them know that they have done the right thing by sharing, and that you do believe what they're saying. Don't forget, you're not the judge, you're not the jury, you're not going to be carrying out the investigation. All you're doing is letting the child reveal what they need to reveal. Don't confront the alleged abuser I've got there. Now, this is very crucial, not to confront them, because if you confront the abuser, you are given an opportunity for them to abscond. You've given them an opportunity to potentially put the victim under greater danger. You are going to be giving them the opportunity to hide any evidence that may be used if there was going to be a court case. So you don't need to do that. That's very, very dangerous. Explain what you're going to be doing next. The other thing to remember as well, you can't promise them confidentiality. You can't say, I'm not going to tell anybody, because the fact they're underage and they have reported, you have a legal obligation to share that information. You have to share that information with your pastor, your designated lead, and also it says there, potentially the police, depending on what was shared with you, you might have to report that to police or social services.
It's always good to say to somebody, if they come to you with something really seriously, I always will say to them, obviously, whatever you say will be in confidence, except as, you share something which is going to be of harm to you, which I feel is going to be of harm to you, you're in danger to others, but because that is the sort of things you need to, it's to protect them. And even when you're going to share, you kind of explain to them the steps that is going to be followed, and obviously reassure them they've done nothing wrong, reassure them that they are actually there, you're actually there to help them, and what you're going to do is to protect them, because obviously one of the greatest problems as well is you have to be careful how this information is shared. For example, say like if they've come in and they've complained with something happening in their home, sometimes you don't want the child to be going back into the same situation where they could be victimized, so you have to protect them. So it's about following the procedure, and there is a good page. We're going to go on to it later, are we? We're going to go just a bit. Yeah. So I will come to you on that one in a couple bits about reporting abuse.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we've covered that slide. So let's go to the next one. Yeah.
Right. So this particular one here is just going. It's a chart which is basically going through the stages of abuse. Yeah, page 69 and 103. By the way, all these appendixes are on the website, on the safeguarding. We've listed them separately as well as in the policy. So it's easy to go and grab. So you can grab Appendix 15. So it's basically showing how do you respond to concern. If it's immediate risk, that means it's a life and death situation or something seriously. Obviously, the police need to be rang 999. Do not delay. And you've got to do that action within 24 hours. If it's something we need to look at a little bit more, discuss the concern with responsible safeguarding lead or responsible person or pastor. Do a preliminary evaluation. What I would suggest, unless something's really emergency, you have to ring the police instantly. When you're doing an assessment, don't try and do that assessment just with yourself. Get some advice, either ringing the conference office, talking to the pastor. Get some advice, because collaboration is good when we're reporting things, because sometimes things can go a bit pear-shaped. It's not about us operating solo. Even me, although I may have an opinion about something, I will seek advice. That's what we always encourage you to do. So when you've done the evaluation, if you still have a concern, the safeguarding person or the pastor, you make your referral, and that you have a little longer than, it's not 24 hours, it's within 48 hours. So that's how you do it. Follow the advice given, record what is said, statutory services get involved, they take it on. Our job, by the way, I will stress this again, we do stress it every safeguarding, our role is not to investigate. Can I repeat it? Our role is not to investigate. Our role, yes, you do a brief assessment, you have to do, but it's to pass it on to the authorities to do the investigation, you know. And the other options are record of concern, relevant support identified and offered, no longer has a concern, continue to be alert to the welfare of the child or the adult at risk, or keep the situation under review. So it's just a step-by-step guide. It's a little flow chart. It helps you. But in everything, there is sometimes wisdom in some consultation, because we have sometimes had situations, solo operating is not advisable. Of course, if it's an emergency, it has to be acted on, of course, you know, and even we would say that. But you have to just judge it and assess it. Each situation is different, and sometimes what one needs advice, yeah? And that is really, really useful to have. Okay, responding to abuse now.
So I don't know. Yes, it's page 64.
Page 64, which is Appendix 14, again on the website. There's a few pages here, because the first one gives you a step-by-step guide of how you basically keep records. So it says only make brief notes, record the actual words used.
I think
you want to
go, if we just with that brief notes one, I think the idea is, remember, we're in a situation where the child is just revealed that there's been image. If a child is saying to you something that's happening, you can't have your head down and be writing reading. Says, just excuse me, can I just tell me, what did you say again? And be writing it down. It's about, if you have to make brief notes, but really ideally you should be giving your attention to the person who is sharing what abuse is happening.
Get a feel for what's happening. I mean, sometimes I guess the advice is, as soon as you finish, just try and jot down some of the key points you've remembered, you know. But you have to give them attention. So this is a harder one, and it's about managing. It's about managing the situation safely. That's what we're saying. But at least what I'm saying, don't leave it if you leave it, say, way after, as I know in one case, not since my time, but I experienced it when I was in ministry, really. Something was said to somebody, they left it, they then discussed it with everybody, but not acted upon it, and it got to us as ministers late. You know, the main thing is you will need some notes, because initially those notes will be vital. So just as soon as possible, that's what we say. Try and stay focused, as it says, and all of those steps there.
And I think as well, if we just bear in mind that on page 64, there are actually 18 bullet points.
Yeah, I was looking at the
You
board.
need to really just be aware of what all those 18 bullet points are. All we've done is just picked out a few of them. We can't put all 18 on the slide. But the main thing is, once you're aware of all of those points, you will be filling in the record of concern on page 65. So on page 65, this is where you are detailing. So as soon as you finish speaking,
65, 66, yeah.
yeah, as soon as you finish speaking with the person who's just been sharing they've been abused, as soon as possible, get a copy of that. I think it is on the website.
The good thing is the Appendix 14 is on the website. It's in a Word version. So you can get that off the website and you can fill it in. And it is a guide, by the way. There may be some things on there not relevant to your case. You can change it's just a guide. That's all it is. It's not, because I do have people come back on this. It's a guide for you to use just to get it's to help jog your memory for the main thing. So you have to use the bit which is relevant to you, but it's in a Word document. So it's very easy to do on the computer now. And we've created that. I do see a hand. Is it Anthony?
Yes, good afternoon, colleague.
Yes.
Pastor, thanks for what you're doing. I wanted to raise this question about those of us in a situation such as this, where you have to catalogue the information as quickly as possible, who are dyslexic, which I am one. So therefore, in taking, I would have to be taking notes, because if I don't, I won't remember the key facts. Now, I know you've emphasized we have to give that person our full attention, but for someone like myself, that could be difficult. So I just wanted to know, for those of us on the call who are neurodiverse, and how do you have anything specifically that we are able to do to help us?
Well, I guess that's why I said you sometimes have to work with the situation the best you can. So if that is the case, it might be good to say at the beginning, because I want to help you. You don't mind if I just take a few, so obviously you have to be jotting down. So at least you've explained to the person what you're doing. They don't feel you ignoring you. And I would generally say, I'm honestly not ignoring you. I just don't want to get this wrong. I want to, for me, it's important that and that's all you do, the situation like that, so it's about being practical. Yeah. And I think it's a valid point. And people will understand, as long as you're talking with them. The main thing is having some dialogue as we're going along. In a counselling session, that's what you would do as well. It's having a dialogue. As long as you make it clear to the person what it is, we can always work through things. Nothing is impossible, but it's about letting them understand and not feel that they're being ignored or whatever. That is the important thing. But thank you for asking that answer.
We have a question past that, where the question is, where do we store the incident form once the form has been completed?
Right. At the moment, I know for the larger churches, some of you may have your laptops and computers or whatever. We have had a bit of a question. I didn't address it in the DBS, which I should have done, because now you're having to also store information now as well, for 2 years at least, when you get an ID. The suggestion, we don't have a facility, a storage device for you. So really, one suggestion has been made electronically, because I was having a chat with some of my colleagues in the office the other day, is that I suppose if most churches should have their own laptops and you have your security devices there, but if you, from the smaller churches, you don't have that, maybe getting a pen drive that you encrypt with a password protected, that might be something that you specifically use for these things. So you've got to find, in terms of paper storage, the advice is it's kept in a lockable filing cabinet. So those churches we have your own buildings, maybe you have that facility. Obviously, we have that facility in the office, but unfortunately, we do not have any sort of storage. I'm going to be looking into this, what may be coming online, which may help in the future, but we haven't fully linked in there. The BUC are looking at My Concern, and that does have the facility that you can anonymously register things, but you also, each DBS officer could be given a password so they can keep records on that on a cloud base. But that is not something we're into yet. We're looking into it. When the new, unfortunately, Pastor Aki has had to relinquish his responsibilities because of his other work he has. So when the new DBS person comes in post, which we hope is going to be in the next few months, that is something they'll be looking at. And we're hoping we can get that up and running. When we do, that'll be great. But for now, you really need to keep it. Now, I know some churches, they've already got systems worked on their laptop, special password protected stuff. But the other option may be this pen drive option. That might be something which the church can invest for you, and it's solely kept for that purpose. Because I appreciate if you haven't got your own building, if you haven't got your fight, and more people are moving away more from paper now to digital. So we have to start looking at this a little bit differently. I don't know if there's any churches on here who've been doing it for a while. Some things you were doing, because I know there are one or two. I don't want to really call names, but if you want to share, we can. But that basically is unfortunately the option. You have to be responsible for that. If it is on a computer, church computer, and it's password, the suggestion has always been something the safeguarding leader and the pastor has access to that, and of course that will be changed when all the officers change. You with me? But you have to protect the information. So a pen drive might be the option if you haven't got access to that. That might be the option to encrypt that and do it that way. And that means the church needs to invest. And then you can keep it electronically. So I hope that helps. But at the moment, that's what we have available. As I say, if this new database comes online, the My Concern, but that would need to be rolled out. We could get to the stage where each of you could have your own password, and obviously we can monitor it. But that would be probably a nice way to move forward. But as I say, we're not unfortunately there yet. So you're responsible individually to do that on your local levels at this moment in time.
Okay, so we'll just move on then. Yeah, so like I said, the main thing is collecting the factual information. And I don't think you mentioned it here, but just to add in as well, when you're collecting information, it's not about you asking questions. If you do need to ask a question, you'd only be asking questions as regarding who were there, when did it happen, where did it happen, what happened, how did it happen. You won't be asking the questions, and why did you do that then? And why did you say that? Or any leading questions. It's not about asking leading questions. All you're wanting to do is to get the facts of the situation. And the person doesn't want to feel bombarded with 101 questions. Also, and how many times have you been doing that with them? And how many times have you... It's not about that. It's just about... Don't forget, once you've got that information, other people will be carrying out the investigation.
Can I just say, because I've noticed a couple of people are dropping off, some of them to say goodbye. Just to remind everybody, we are going to have a test. A test paper will be sent out. I want to say, because we need to make sure we've got all your emails and we've collated everyone. I hope everybody's come on through the registration, so we should have them all. We will probably be sending everything out on Tuesday, most likely. Okay, so when everything is collated and sent to you, you'll have Sister Vera's number on there and also my number on there. Sort of email address, and you need to respond within 14 days, because in order, it's not just attending this, we need to do, it's not a hard test, but we just need you to do it, complete it, send it back. Once that's been sent back, we will then start processing your certificates, and a lot of it we're doing online now, because we know we've had a few problems in the past with the post, so they'll be most likely emailed to you. If for some reason by Wednesday you have not received an email from us with your test paper and all the supplementary things you'll need to go with that, please get in touch with the conference office, because that means we may not have your email address right. That shouldn't be happening because you're registered, but just in case, I don't want everybody to be left out, because obviously from next week we will count the 14 days and we want it in. The reason why we have to put a deadline on it is because I have other training go off and I don't want to burden poor Sister Vera with any more work, more than what she has to do. We need to obviously we want to get this done before the next group comes. But so there will be a test. So just remind anybody, in case some people are leaving, that is coming. So it does help to listen to what we've said, but it's not rocket science. It's not hard to do if you follow through, and it helps you to read the policy anyway. That's the benefit of it, and reinforce. Once you've got your certificate, you're fully qualified. You will have that for 2 years. But just coming to the course alone, unfortunately, is not sufficient. You do need to get this certificate, and that can only be done once you've done the test. So we are going to send all that out to you. Okay, I hope that helps. Sorry about that.
Yeah, Pastor, somebody says, what happens if you fail the test?
We'll be in touch with you, and we'll have a reconversation and see. Maybe have to come back to another training, or maybe depends what it is. We will certainly talk with you about it and give you an opportunity to support to redo it or relook at things if you fail. We haven't had that many failures yet. Maybe 1 or 2 which should be rectified, but it doesn't happen that often. But we will obviously come back to you and let you know. We won't just ignore you. Okay.
Okay, so this second bullet says record the actual words used, including any swear words or slang. And that's very important to do, because it's not about you making it look like a pretty report with very fancy language. It's about the actual language that the child is using. That's important that you do that. And this next point here, write up your notes as soon as possible after the disclosure, preferably within 1 hour of having that meeting, always within 24 hours. It is so crucial. And if I could just also add, your original notes cannot be destroyed. You have to keep those original notes, because like I said, if for any reason this particular, once you've reported it, maybe it had to be reported straight to the police, social services, it has to go to court, whatever has to happen, they want to see your original notes. So you can't just get rid of them and throw them away. You have to keep all of those documents and all of those bits of information. And the next point here, there it is. Yeah, do not destroy your original notes, because it might be needed in a court of law. And the last one there, yeah, if you do see any, I don't know, it depends on where you are at the moment. You may have gone swimming that particular day. You may have been at a beach on that particular day. You may have noticed some bruising on that particular day that the child happens to disclose to you what's happened to them. So if that is the case, then you just may need to just do a quick, as it were, body map, just indicating where any bruising was seen. Okay, so like I said, if you just go through on that page 64, and then if you go to the page 65 and 66, you will see there, and it's even got time. It's got the time of when the incident happened, and all of those boxes. You just fill in as much as you can. The more information you fill in, the better it will be.
And any alteration you need to make, you make those alterations, because it's a guide. And that's what I'm saying. So I know, because I'm only answering what I know will come back. All past some of this is not relevant to me. If it's not relevant, that's fine. It's a guide. You just deal with the bits what are and adapt it. And it's in a Word version. So it's just to help you get the information. And even if we're going to look at something for you, we need you to fill one of those out. You know, so I will always say that if you ring me for any advice, because we need to have a guide so we know roughly what we're working with. and to give you the advice on. And that's the purpose of that document, really. Okay, so very briefly now, we're not going to spend too long on this, just the impact of abuse. I said at the beginning, some of the things we're discussing today may trigger things what may have happened in our own past experience. So these things live on. It can sometimes come out in anger issues. It can come out in trust issues. It can have spiritual pain, poor relationships, shame, all of these impacts. And abuse does live on. The impact of it does live on. Healing can take place. Sometimes the scars are still there. But through counseling, through prayer, through support, people can get healing, but there is an impact, and that's what we're saying. And I think we just need to bear that in mind. And also, I think from a gospel point of view, I've always believed church, God wants to save us, not just spiritually, but emotionally and mentally. And there are a lot of hurting people coming to faith, and we don't know where they're coming from. The gospel, grace brings us healing, grace brings hope. But we need to be conscious of those things. It's part of our ministry to understand. But understand if something bad's happened, it does have an impact. And how we manage that and how we help people to work through those things. And that can sometimes healing doesn't always take place overnight. That's what I'm saying. It's a process. And so maybe we need to be a bit more tolerant of one another and be there for one another, because this is a real issues that we're having to deal with. And that's, all of us come from different situations, and sometimes that's when some of these behaviors are coming out because of what has happened to us. And so that's what we just want to, I guess, highlight there.
Okay, what we're going to do now is just briefly look at this study that was carried out in 1990, and it was the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study, and it was a public health study that showed how traumatic experiences in childhood are strongly linked to poor health and social outcomes in adulthood. And so what they basically did, they sent out this questionnaire to a large group of people, and they asked them to answer questions, and there were 10 areas that they looked at, and there were the 10 areas here on the left bar there. Physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, mental, domestic, substance abuse, incarcerated relative, divorce, physical neglect, and emotional neglect. And so what they found out through carrying out this study was that if a person had experienced any one of these as a child, then it was thought that obviously that was not a good experience to have to go through. But they found that the higher the ACE score, the greater the risk of harm. Now, they started off noticing that those children who had experienced a number of those particular areas there, they had adverse childhood, what they called adverse childhood experiences. They also noticed that these children had disrupted neurodevelopment. That means that they weren't progressing in the way that they should be for children of similar ages. They weren't achieving academically as well as they should achieve. They had social, emotional, and cognitive impairment. They had adoption of healthy risk behaviours. They had social problems and disease and disability. Chronic diseases like heart disease and diabetes and cancer. And substance misuse. Mental health problems like depression, anxiety, and even suicide. And what was really sad was that they ultimately noticed through all of the data that they had in that if children experienced 6 or more of these ACEs, that they were likely to die 20 years earlier than sort of children who had no ACEs at all. So the fewer the ACEs, the greater the chance of living a longer, happier life. And so they ended up saying to themselves, well, this is what they found in the study. They said the ACE study shifted their focus from what's wrong with you to what happened. And it's a very sad study, really. And why, you might say, well, why does this study matter? Well, this study matters because childhood trauma has led to lifelong effects, the lifelong effects of, like we said, violence and criminal behaviour. This is what was exhibited in adulthood, the substance misuse. And the early intervention and safeguarding reduces the long-term harm, which is why we say it's important to act and to make sure that we're safeguarding and speaking up for vulnerable children, and because this is the problem that it has, and it basically it supports trauma-informed practice in the health, education, and social care.
And in a sense, you know, that's a mission, isn't it? Isn't part of our mission as a church to speak up for the vulnerable, speak up for those, and this really is underpinning everything that we do. It's the reason why we do what we do. It's the reason why we probably have to advocate so much, because it's only when we realize these things that we can begin to help and bring that needed healing, which needs to happen. And God's grace is wonderful, but we have to be demonstrating in a practical way. And that's part of what safeguarding is. And if you can think of it that way, because sometimes we probably don't look at that side of it, but that is so important. There's a missionary aspect to this. There's a missionary aspect to this. Okay, we no longer use the word keeping the church family safe, it's safeguarding our church, but this is the general idea. If you see something, say something. Why? Because combating abuse is what? Everyone's responsibility, not just the safeguarding leads. It's all of those of us who are in church, responsible adults. We have to look out for those around. And sometimes abuse is not necessarily from within the church. It can be from outside, but by us being observant and looking out, that might have answered the one. I think there was a question earlier about, and I haven't got it here now, Natal, but I think it was about, is it the parents' responsibility to point out, you know, if a child's has been abused or abused? It's if we see it, then it's our responsibility. Yes, the parents do have a responsibility to protect, but sometimes for whatever reasons that isn't always happening. So if we see abuse, whether it be in or out, we have a responsibility to report it. And I know of a situation once we was driving along and me and Delamont came across something and we had to report it, you know. So those things, that's our duty. And by the way, as a church, if we're running a program and we see abuse and we don't report it, it is now a criminal offence anyway. You know, the law is past that. So we have a responsibility, but we also have a Christian duty, I think. And because of what we discussed earlier with the AC study, that is important. So it's really all our responsibilities. And I think, sorry.
Yeah, I found the question. It is it the church's responsibility to address inappropriate touching or behaviour with children, or is it down to the parents?
Well,
so it's before it even gets to them being touched.
Oh, before. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. If you look, it is down to the parents, obviously, to talk to the children about these things so they understand that they know the danger signals. That is their responsibility. But obviously, in the sense, if we have seen something, then we have to act on that, don't we? But obviously, it is the parent. A good parent will, I guess, spend time talking, or we should even be able to explain in the parenting classes the importance then of talking through things for your children. That is really important.
Yeah, so I think it has to start with in the home. because you need to educate the child about their body and
Of course.
who's allowed to, well, no one's allowed to touch them without their permission, and no one's certainly allowed to see their private parts or uncover them. But then I think, as well as parents, I think as a church, we can have that discussion. I think even in adventurers, we can have this discussion. I think it needs to be talked about so that everybody is aware of what is acceptable and unacceptable in the way of, it's basically sex education, isn't it? Which we need to be doing a lot more of.
I actually feel something we do as cousins helps me when I go to churches, when we're talking about this kind of thing, and also generally from, because I've got the family ministries hat as well, so it's part of family ministries as well. It's really important. You've got to understand sexual education is being taught in the schools. Unfortunately, I'll say this the best way I can. The way it is being taught now is really against the principles which the Bible lays down, which we believe, for God's ideal. The problem we have in the church is we probably have not enough spoken about our sexuality and healthy things in the way we should. Yes, the parents do have an ultimate responsibility, but also the church as well. What better place to let our young people be educated than in church? So we need to create the space, the environment that we can talk about what is the positive way. Yes, it's not about condemning, we accept there's different things and all of that. People are on journeys, but we have to at least be able to find a space to promote that. And if we don't do that, we are failing our young people and failing, their development. So this is something I think we need to do more. We have a lot of material in the church. Our Adventist churches, but we've got so much. There's a book on, I had it in front of me here now, I've just got it in a second, but it's on our sexuality, appropriate ways of discussing with kids ages. We have so much material. We need to start to utilize that and be doing a lot more on this. And now is the time to do it, because to be honest with you, there is a lot out there, some of which you would not be very happy with if you realize your children are exposed to it. But what are we going to do to counteract? The counteract by having those discussions, and it will help them. And the young people want that. It's about guiding them as well, so we can have a little part to play. But of course, as ultimately the parents need to be equipped as well, because parenting has a big responsibility, major. But what I'm saying, it's a combined effort, I think. And it can be doing. I know somebody's mentioned the Spark Love there, other programs as well coming up, and these are the kind of things we need to be doing and this will help build all these things. So this is very important. What you're suggesting there.
Okay, so
closing off now with the last few, aren't we now?
The last few slides.
Still coming.
So we've got here the 4 R's of safeguarding, really important. The first one is to recognize. So we need to know what abuse is taking place, and that we need to act to protect. And the policy's got them, all the abuses listed. The second one,
we need to respond, which is really important. In other words, listening to an individual's concern, that is really important. So recognize and respond. Those are 2 key ones.
Third, we need to record. We need to make sure. And I think when I say record, obviously, if there's a very serious allegation and there's definite abuse, we need to record it. But also, we need to make sure that we are reporting, because we need to report to any concern. So even if you haven't gotten a serious allegation, you will still need to report anything that you're concerned about. If you've noticed a change in the children that you are teaching, a change in the way that they're carrying on, change in the sense of there may be some bruising, a change in the sense of they've said, oh, I've not had anything to eat for hours, or I don't know. If there's children stealing food, these are things you need to report. You don't start questioning the child, but you report them to the DSL.
Right, yeah. In terms of keeping the records, the records need to be kept for 10 years and reviewed prior to destruction, but it depends. So it's quite a serious thing really, and I guess you need to find the systems in church. I think I know one church who does have some systems, but I appreciate some of you don't have your buildings, so you've got to now find a way of keeping it and just keeping it securely. So if it's on a pen drive, that might be the answer, or find a way of keeping something secure that you and of course when officers change, that needs to be passed on, but then different codes need to be put on. So it's that kind of thing. But it's also reporting to the conference office as well. Let us know when, because obviously we can at least keep a log, at least we advise you. We're not there to tell you necessarily to get involved. Sometimes it's real serious, we may have to be, but yeah, our job is to really advise you there. Yeah, so that's important. Talk to us.
Get for my good.
I see somebody's mic is on, so we'll try and notify it. So this is a body really, really important, 31.8, and it's from Proverbs 31.8. They've replaced the previous service.
May I please ask if there has been, if there's been a concern or something that has been reported. From my previous professional experience, we used to share things with other agencies. But as a church, we've got children that go to school. Would you share things like that, depending with what has been reported with the school? Because the school might have other things that they have had in their records. What do you do about that information?
But once you have reported something to the authorities, that is the sort of investigating process which happens, isn't it? So they would involve maybe if it, for example, if it's some historical abuse or something, then the school may be informed. So naturally that will happen as a result of you escalating the situation. So that is a normal process, isn't it, of things that would happen. So yes, sometimes authorities will have to get involved. Sometimes it may be the school, sometimes it may be outside. But that will happen as a result, and things get married up. That is important. And that's the kind of, I don't know if you want to add to that from a school perspective, but that's what normally happens, isn't it, in these things?
And I think, yeah, but I think the school wouldn't be getting in touch with the church.
No, they won't be getting in touch with your church. But what I'm saying, that's something that's something the authority, if the authority needed to do, whoever you reported it to, if the police are involved, they would naturally do, because remember, it's not, what we've got to always remember, it's not our job to investigate. You with me? That's for the authority that we're working with. So when it be social services or whatever, if they need to liaise, they would do all that. All that. And that's what normally would happen. But I'm also showing you this body here. Sorry.
No, I say thank you.
No worries, sister. Yeah. This body here, 31.8, traditionally the BUC was members of, but since I've been in office, I'm paying the membership fee from the conference now. So any of us can ring this number. We would ring for advice, but you just don't say, you're with the North England Conference, part of the, the church. They will also advise us. They are very good because they're a Christian organization, so they understand how church works, and they're very sympathetic. And sometimes when we need some advice, need some for the information, they are sending us some things now. So what we're going to try and do, I'm going to work with the media team to see if some of their updates, articles, when I see it's relevant to us, if we can add it to the web page, the safeguarding page, we're going to start to look at that, but we're going to have to look at the media side. So Sister Vera will help us, get that sorted. So that's something we need to do. So there are these bodies, but it's good to know bodies are out there that they work more with church groups. So it's better to talk to them rather than some of the other ones sometimes when we need that kind of advice. And then, of course, there's the numbers. These are just a few of them here. You've got the counselling lines for both SEC and NEC, the listing helpline, the women's aid, men's advice, 31.8, all the numbers there. That's all in your policy. But, of course, it's good to have these numbers up in church, and if any local ones you have that people can talk to, these are really good. These are the sort of things you need to put up. And, of course, finally, remember the counselling is there. for anyone in need. So we'll send you again that one of this one, and we have some obviously hard copy flyers if you need. If you take a photo of the QR code on the counselling poster, which we can send out to you as well, you'll get a little web page, and we're developing that. So it's all in development. So things are getting there, and that is useful. So I want to thank you. There's a hand for your time, and we're going to just stop the PowerPoint now. Yeah. Sorry, Naisha, is it? Sorry. Sorry, you have a question.
Yes. It's not a question, but it's kind of like a query, because I think I've tried to listen throughout the presentation where I think there was a talk of, if you find out an incident that has happened or a report has come to you, you've got 24 hours.
Sorry,
I'm gonna do that again. I'm gonna go and speak to the man at the door.
Yeah.
Sorry, I heard you a little bit. I missed some of it. You said 24 hours, yeah?
I hear you
Yeah,
too
because I
well.
think
you
in one
say
of the
it again?
slides, yeah, it says you've got 24 hours to gather your information or write up your
Yes.
I think without giving a bit too much, I think that is a big delay already, because in terms of where their children have disclosed abuse, for example, if the child has got physical abuse, and if we're to delay to produce or refer that to social care, there's actually evidence is not going to be there. If the child has got a bruise, if they were going to have a medical at some point, by the time we delay, that actually puts a delay in the system. Also, I think social care is available 24 hours a day in all our local authorities where we live. And even if it's on weekends, there's always EDT, and we can use those for guidance and advice. That's what would be my recommendation in terms of advice, as opposed to waiting 24 hours to actually write up your report.
No, yeah. I think there might have been a little bit of misunderstanding on that one. Yeah. You want to say what you want to say first? Yes.
I'm not being able to hear you too well, but I think the guidelines is when you're writing up your notes, it's saying do it as soon as possible. It did say within an hour, if possible within an hour, and then once you've done that, you get them sent straight in. If it's an emergency situation, you have to call
999.
999
straight away. Yes.
You don't wait. You do things straight away. The quicker the better. It's saying within an hour.
And when it mentions the 24 hours for reporting, if you look at what it says within. So that isn't really. It's not me, because if you have a real emergency case, right? I guess you're not going to wait 24 hours to report it. You're going to ring the police straight away. If it's a real emergency, you have to ring straight away. So they will act very quickly, normally. But what it's trying to say, do not delay. It's not saying, and of course, I think I see what you're saying. Even within the emergency ones, there is some emergency, and there's some things which I guess they're still emergency, but they may not be as immediate. But not life threatening, but once you phone the police, and if it's one of those situations, they are going to react very quickly. They're going to come out very quickly. Obviously, you have to get all your reports together at some point, but you have to at least have the reporting side ready for them within the 24 hours. But it doesn't mean if somebody's in an emergency and you ring the police, they're going to act straight away. Or an ambulance or something. That's going to come, I would hope, within a few minutes or whatever, So that's what we mean. But obviously, in terms of getting some documentation together, that can take a little time. But even that still has to be done within a short space of time. So it's in that sense we mean it when we talk about reporting. It doesn't mean that if it's something in emergency, you wait 24 hours and then suddenly ring. That's got to be done instantly. That has to be.